Hey, we're here. I think everything worked out okay. Folks in
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, folks in comments, give us a thumbs up or let us know that you can actually hear us and that there, fingers crossed, no technical issues.
Anyone?
That's not good.
I know there's a delay. There's a delay. It's
Okay, true. This is
That's what I'm telling myself anyway.
Okay, good.
Sweet. All right, good.
Ooh, good job, John.
That was a relief.
I had major flashbacks to the halls of art. He immediately put me in a bad mood. But yeah, so we're using StreamYard this time around, which is very, very streamlined. So it works pretty well.
So far, so good.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you all for showing up. We really do appreciate the support on this Sunday afternoon, technically, I guess. And welcome to the ultimate campaign defrag for our Mothership sci-fi horror RPG campaign. 24 episodes long, nice tight little campaign, which we are quite proud of. If I don't think there's anyone out there who probably is in this chat who doesn't know who we are, but we are 3D6 down the line, the most criminally underwatched actual play series on the internet. My name is John, and going around the horn, we have.
Hi, I'm Mike, and in this campaign, I played Rick Sharp the Marine.
I'm David, and in this campaign, I played David, the David.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt, and for most of this campaign, I played Thul Sadu, a scientist, and for a brief moment, Trader Vic with a D. Don't worry about it.
It was epic, though.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ted, and most recently in this campaign, I was playing Delphonse Hubble, Marine.
And before that, though, Ted, come on, you got to give him props.
Oh yeah, Dixon, good old Dixon.
Good old Dixon.
Dixon.
And of course, we got to give props to
Elvis.
here.
Elvis.
Oh,
I
hi,
want to play a
Elvis.
game where I get to play Elvis.
A live shot of Elvis, yeah.
Awake. An awake Elvis.
Yeah. All right. Not for long, though. No, he's back asleep. Yeah, so thank you for everyone for joining us. We just finished our Mothership Gradient Descent campaign. We have our ongoing Return to Dolmenwood campaign. Episodes 0 and 1, of course, are available to watch for free on YouTube and podcast form. And if you want to catch the rest of it, you want to head over to Patreon and get a paid subscription, and you can get the rest of the episodes. We're on episode 13 so far. We do about 2 of those a month, and we're really enjoying that. Rest assured, just because Mothership is over, that means nothing for Dolmenwood. Dolmenwood will remain the same. We are recording. It's same format, same provisos, everything. So don't worry about that. Dolmenwood will still continue. And of course, if Mothership or Return to Dolmenwood was what brought you to the channel, don't forget to look at our past series, which is our original Dolmenwood campaign, which started us all off. Cut short, 22 episode long campaign, but which is still a lot of fun. And of course, our magnum opus, our 114 episode long mega dungeon crawl, The Halls of Arden Vul.
Part 1. We're going to do another 114 episodes, right?
Part 1, exactly. Yeah.
That should be a stretch goal of some sort.
There we go.
Yeah,
Right
exactly. You can probably see, where is it? Right here. You can scan that QR code if you are interested in joining the Patreon. That will give you access to all of our Return to Dolmenwood episodes if you subscribe to any paid tier. You will get a whole bunch of other bennies as well, access to secret Discord channels, and lots of other fun stuff as well. And your solemn duty, of course, is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you hit the button on this chat as well, and tell all your friends. And yeah, that'll do it, I guess, for the calls to action, right?
Even if you listen on podcasts, please go like and subscribe on the YouTube channel.
Yes, please. That'd be amazing. And like the podcast too, wherever your platform of choice would be amazing. Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars, hopefully. Give us a review. That would be super helpful. Okay, so let's get into it, guys. We'll be monitoring chat a little bit. We're going to discuss our thoughts on Gradient Descent as an adventure, our campaign, the way that we handled it, the way we tackled it, and of course Mothership as a game as well. And then near the end of the stream, we're going to take we had our Conqueror. This is a benefit of being a Patreon. The highest tier of Patreon are our Conquerors, and we gave them the opportunity for each of them to ask us one question, which we would do our absolute best time what's the word I'm looking for? Time allowing. Thank you.
Time permitting.
Time permitting, yes, for to answer those questions. So we're going to be doing those later. So if you have if you have questions in chat, just be aware that you feel free to ask them, but we may not be monitoring it that closely as we sort of talk. But we will do our best. I leave it more to my guys here to monitor that better than I do, since I'm probably going to be doing most of the talking. Maybe not. We do have.
I see that the murder god ball has approved of the last episode of Dolanwood, so I will just point that out.
The who?
What's a murder god ball?
What's the murder? Oh, Mike, Baldur's Gate. What? We're moving on. We're moving on.
Okay.
Baldur's Gate, what now? Huh? Yeah. Sorry, John. Go, please proceed.
So yeah, so I figured basically to start us off, just going to give you guys to talk about your overall impressions of, not necessarily, like we can talk about this later, not necessarily the game or the product, but actually the way that we, like our narrative, like what your thoughts on our campaign, how you felt about it, like were you satisfied, what were your favorite moments, that sort of stuff. I mean, what do you guys think?
I
I
would
first.
preferred not to have died.
Really?
Well, right then, right?
I kind of thought I'd die a whole lot more than I did in Mother
too.
The irony of me racking up the bodies I did in Ardenpool and Dolmenwood won for the last time I played a good guy, according to him, right? But versus David, the survivor.
Yeah.
I thought the death count would be higher. I actually was counting on the death count being higher, to be honest with you. I had like a backup character like ready, I don't know, like 3 months ago. And
From the start.
Yeah. And well, no, I mean, I'm better than that. I didn't think I was going to die right away. I waited 3 months.
Grader's been on backstage pacing the whole time.
I thought the death count would be higher. I think I found that overall, like our play style was had to evolve a little bit from like the Ardenpool play style, like a lot. And I maybe that slowed down our progress and our death count a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if it did.
I think we had a real problem transitioning from the sort of slow creeping, investigating, thinking, cerebral stuff we were doing in Ardenpool into a very different environment in Mothership. I mean, I think we all adapted to the rule set really well, which frankly, I love the rule set. The mechanic of all of it was fantastic, but like, yeah, I know we like every episode there'd be some like John's like, look, man, you're digging up the wrong, tree here.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not something to like get deep research on. This is.
But I'd like to look for one more secret door. There's got to be
exactly.
one door here.
It's a room full of pipes, guys. Come on.
Well, it was something that I had to get used to too. Like
Yeah.
I had my own struggles from the GM side when we first started the campaign, because I was falling into that old OSR play style as well. Even though I had read the Mothership books cover to cover, and they're very, very, very good about telling you like this is the sort of outlook you need to have to run this game.
Yeah.
But it's just hard. It's habit.
I mean, I suspect I haven't. I will now thumb through my gradient descent. But it seems like that's also in terms of at least the like death count. That's also compounded by the scale of gradient descent, and that like the time to kill, the TTK as the gamers use it, is much longer in gradient descent than in the oneers that I've played of Mothership, right? Because it's just much larger space. There's less of a pressure of constant sort of death. There's a lot of stress in bends, but people coming and shooting at your face is a little more distributed. So
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like we did a lot of skipping around, and in that skipping around, because of the size of it, we happened to land in some of the less dangerous areas. Like you were saying, John, like floor 3 is incredibly dangerous. Like there are a lot of dangerous areas, and it seemed like the kind of natural path, like the most wide open, well-trodden path, leads you down into level 3, like through the Chosen, and it was the Chosen and what was the other one?
Fallen.
The Fallen, right? Kind of through there and into level 3, and we just like, nope, we didn't go that way, and we went other ways, which just led us to like it seems like most of the dangerous stuff that we had early on was random encounters, and I there were the ghosts and the machines, which were dangerous but navigable, right? You could figure those out. And a lot of the most dangerous stuff, like we just didn't kind of hit because of the weird path that we took.
So
Sure. I mean, it's worth. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. Jonah Fouts 4030 made a good point in the comments, just saying that like stress is kind of like a micro death within itself. And so in Gradient Descent, it was like there are multiple health tracks, right? There's wounds / health. Stress is definitely a health track. And then also the bends is kind of a health track, right? When you think about it, because the implications for your character are you're tracking all three. Any one of those gets too high, and yeah, it's like a micro death, or it's like a major impact on your character. And I think that's actually really true.
I like how that just added on to the game without like it didn't replace anything or change anything. You just tacked it on. You still had stress, you still had panic, and then you had this bends thing. You could really do that. You could have done the same thing with Ardenvool. You know, you have like some sort of Egyptian curse score that's like building up on you, and eventually a beast drops out of your face, and you turn into an ibis or something.
Right.
That was one of the things about this that I thought was really kind of a neat aspect that could be translated to a bunch of different things, like this thing that happens every time you go in, because in old school play, it's this in and out, right? Like you go in as long as you can, then you retreat to heal up if you can and get your treasure and get your experience. And so, but there's usually not like a toll to pay unless there's
I mean, there's something to be said for the RPG lives in the random encounters kind of thesis, right? Especially with OSR, and having something that mirrors that as a response mechanic that is akin to morale but much more deadly is a really interesting conversation.
It is a bit like a morale thing going on. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's speaking of random encounters, like yes, you're absolutely right, that helps them, but I mean, I don't know how much you four have actually looked at the module since we finished, but they do have random encounters, and they're pretty much straight up out of old role-playing games. There's a chart for every floor, and you're basically every time you enter a new room, you basically, like every turn, like every 10 minutes or so, you roll, and if you get doubles on a percentile, you hit a random encounter. On an industrial size room, it takes 30 minutes more or less to cross it. So that was one of the downsides of an industrial scale room, is that it took more time to cross through, very OSR, and so therefore it increases the chance because you're making 3 checks, right? But this is one of those things where I don't know if I would say like I feel like I did it wrong, but after I was being very diligent about that, but as I became a little bit more frustrated with the sparseness of the entire product, that sparseness also equates to those random encounter tables too. It would be like a diver, 10 security androids, a troubleshooter, and that's it. Right. That's all they would give you. And so there was times where I was rolling random encounters, and I'd see I'd roll one up, and I'd be like a diver, and I'm like, I just can't. I had tables like, and major props go out to the people on the Mothership Discord who have like just like typical Mothership, like they have an unbelievable community of people supplying really cool stuff. And so when I was preparing for this campaign, I had lots of really cool resources for interesting divers. Like I had a whole list that I had made that I made up charts for myself that so every time I hit diver, I could roll in that chart. But the issue I was having is they were all so unique. It's like and I couldn't have them all in my head at once. So like when I would roll on one, I had to like, how does this guy fit into what they're doing?
It's a lot of mental load. Yeah,
you know what the example of that was? What did the community end up calling him? Like the Dracula. Disco Dracula or whatever. Disco, the guy with the spotlights.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy was rad. I forgot about him.
Remember that guy? Yeah, that's the random encounter. That was in that NPC was not in the module. That was created by a community member that I just used. Right.
Well done, community.
John. Don't you do that like trick where you like roll up like 4 wandering encounters like ahead of time and then just have them like statted out and ready to go?
No, not anymore. Because I flat out refuse to do that level of prep anymore. I just won't do it. To me that's work, and I'm playing a game. I'm not here to work. Now that's my personal GMing style. That's changed over time, and I know that a lot of people out there, even in our community, are like super into all that sort of heavy duty prep, but it is not fun for me.
Well, I think it also warrants saying that, like, we really do play this like we would play it without the cameras on. But the reality is the frequency of recording a couple campaigns as much as we do increases the load of even without preparation, right? Just like the mental load. So anything you can do to sort of like cut the fat on that and still have a functional game is like better for it. I didn't certainly feel any lack on my end because I have no idea what's going on in your head, John. The only thing I know is that every night your sleep paralysis demon looks like me and says industrial scale rooms. And but
airlock, bulkhead, airlock,
No.
bulkhead.
Airlock, bulkhead.
Oh yeah, that's a thing. But that's actually a good thing to bring up too. Like Ted, very what am I trying to say?
He's pedantic.
I am pedantic, and I like the terminology to be right, and I like the science to be right, and I understand that wasn't John's thing, but it was making me crazy. That, is that in fact a bulkhead? Is it an ordinary door?
Well, okay, so this opens up a thing that I want to get out there because my biggest regret for this campaign was ever voicing to you, the players, and to the community that I am not well versed in sci-fi. That is not true. That is not true. I'm here to say it right now. I know sci-fi. I have been steeped in it all my life. Just because I'm not a Trekkie doesn't mean no, I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm just saying I've never been into Star Trek doesn't make me not a sci-fi fan. Right? Just to get on my little high horse and be a little bit defensive. Okay. Yeah. I'm steeped in sci-fi literature. I've read Asimov and Philip K. Dick. Blade Runner is like probably one of my top 3 movies of all time. And I've read, Why Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I've read all that stuff. I watched all of the movies. I was into Firefly and Babylon 5 and all that sort of shit.
Well, you win your anti-Trek comment with a pro Babylon 5.
Yeah. So Trek never hit for me. It's not a big deal. It's not for everyone. Okay. But I do know my sci-fi. Marrying my knowledge of sci-fi to Mothership is a different story, especially this product. Okay. And I absolutely am not shitting on this product. I think it's a work of absolute genius. It really, really is. It's just the way that it is presented to me in my GMing style, it doesn't flow with my style. Like it doesn't jive with my style as much. Although I did find it very easy to parse. It was very easy to sort of move in between the different parts of the module really, really easily because of the info design is incredible. If anyone doesn't have the module, you should pay the money and get it because it's amazing. You'll learn a lot of lessons to apply to other genres of games. But the sparseness of it, I really, as my GMing style, I need more detail. So when we look at what Ted was referring to, like the airlock doors versus the bulkhead doors. Yeah. And you're asking me these questions, they don't have the answers for them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I can't come up with them on the fly because I don't think there was any thought given to it in the first place. Right. So yes, I could extrapolate it out scientifically, like what it would mean. But the thing is like it wouldn't marry with what is presented in the material. Sure.
I think the same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, let me just get this off my chest. I know I'm consuming time because it's been bugging me the entire campaign. Is this thought that I don't know sci-fi, which is why I got frustrated. It's not the case. The Spotlight Dracula guy, when you're in that encounter, you guys were asking him normally because you're good players. You were like, "How did you get here? Where have you been? What have you heard?" And blah blah blah. And it's like, I don't know. He's just a freaky dude, man. It's like I couldn't extrapolate like where he had been. How did he get there? What are his motivation? You know what I mean? It's very, very difficult to kind of come up with that stuff on the fly. And I found that in both the random NPCs that would pop up from random encounters and also the way that the spaceship was laid out with all the hard science. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Of course it does. And I want to defend what I was saying a minute ago, like the bulkhead airlock thing. That's not about sci-fi, and I'm not disputing your sci-fi cred. I mean, I saw Blade Runner with you. I know you're there, right? What I was referring to was more the science part in the way that a zero-G space station with rotating parts and so on would actually be built, and the safety of you can get micrometeorite hole anytime. You need to compartmentalize the same way you do on a ship, on a naval ship, a submarine, compartmentalization and that kind of thing. And those are, maybe it's a little nitpicky, but those are things which can be used to tactical advantage. If you can close a ordinary office door behind you and latch it, it's not really going to stop a security droid with, giant gorilla arms, right?
Mhm.
But if you can weld a bulkhead shut, that's half an inch of steel kind of thing with big valves and differential air pressure, and that makes a big difference. So I wanted more of that detail, and that's
Sure.
that's deep diving on the science of pressure environments and structural engineering and so on and so forth. And
For sure. Yeah.
I want to point out one thing, because this kind of came to me as we were kind of navigating through all this. I think that there's a really clever built-in out in this game, and that is that Monarch is so weird, right? And from the beginning, it's presented and consistently, and John, you were great at this, it's unknowable. We cannot begin to fathom what's going on there. So in a sense, anytime as a player, this is just how I would kind of process things. If we came up to a place that was super weird, and I could tell, like, I don't, you would give me an answer like, I don't know, like, it does. It was very easy for me to say, oh, this is one of those incomprehensible things
Sure.
that Monarch has done in a weird way that makes sense somehow in that world, but I can't comprehend.
I do. I have a couple thoughts on that. What Ted and Matt said, and I think it's worth. we can't say this every time we issue a remark on the module, but to preface, Luke's credible. I think Gradient Descent is brilliant. Wolves is great, et cetera, et cetera. We can sort of assume that moving forward, right? As we talk about the module, I think fairly. No, and I'm being sincere. I really like Luke's work, but let's get into it, right? Like, I think even aside from the genre aspect, there are a couple big friction points that manifest for all of us. One is that, or at least in my interpretation, one is that we have a mega dungeon, right? We have a hyper vertical space, and this is really important, the verticality, right? And all of this sort of like metaphor and high concept, and even like the point crawl aspects of Gradient Descent and its characters and its interesting rooms and stuff like that are so hyper considered and so interesting that it holds up the product very easily. But the problem is you're still a gamer in a spatial matrix, and the easiest microcosm of where that fails in Gradient Descent for me is the inability to go from one floor to another in an event, right? Or any sense that like the space ceases to exist below or above floor or ceiling level, right? Now, that doesn't say that all dungeons have that, right? But what is a platonic ideal for a dungeon entrance? It's like a well, right? Or something of those nature. Those are things that are very intuitive to us. And it's very much in a gamer's mind, I think, and I don't make excuses for ourselves, I think it's just generally true, that you want to dig. You know what I mean? Like, you want to do that. And if there's no resolution for that, if the easiest thing I would do if I were to go back into Gradient, not easy, but a thing I think worth doing if I were to go back into Gradient Descent as a designer or a home brewer, is try to sort of rationalize some connective tissue, some jacqueusing perhaps, that isn't just the elevator shaft or the vacuum of space. And once you've established just that, like, what does event do? What happens when acid burns through the floor? It's a game about aliens, right? Like, then a lot of the other things can be hand waved because we still have a sense of a contiguous space. And I think the irony of Gradient Descent is every floor feels like it's a different town a little bit, right?
Yes.
I didn't feel that connectivity. And I think that creates friction in the logic of gamers because they want to parse that. The last thing I'll say in connection to Matt is I both agree that it's a very good philosophical, right? Like, or like sci-fi speculative thing to say that Monarch is unknowable. But in an interactive space, creating an unknowability, it applies a huge level of friction on players whose incentive structure is knowing. Okay. So you're never not going to have some tension between the GM and the players because the entire purpose of playing a game is discovery. That's why we're in an interactive medium and not watching a movie where we can passively accept some things are too esoteric to understand, right? That's not a criticism per se, just an acknowledgement of the medium and where the adaptation of filmic knowledge or like book metaphors become really difficult to implement as a spatial matrix, right? I think
I
it's
think
tough, you
Good
know. I
points.
don't know.
I think
Yeah.
for me, like I don't completely agree with that, because I think in a massive space station, the idea that one floor is stacked right on top of each other might be like incorrect, only because there might be 100 yards of machinery between floors, and so there is no tunneling through to get to the floor below you, and you might end up in space, or you might end up in an engine compartment, or you might end up in something else. But this kind of brings up this disagreement that we're having, brings up my one of my big points about why this game was challenging. John, you're very steeped in sci-fi, but your sci-fi is not the same as Ted's sci-fi, which is not the same as my sci-fi. And so we all go into these things with slightly different expectations of how things should work, right? So the bulkhead, airlock, regular door thing, I think we all kind of parse that. I just think submarine. Regular door goes to the captain's, like, office. Bulkhead separates the missile compartment from the kitchen, right? So that if there's a blowout, you can seal those doors. And then the airlock goes outside. And so, like, I mean, when you think about it in those terms, it's actually not that hard. You just got to kind of think about what would make sense. But to John's point, like, maybe you needed to watch Das Boat more than Star Trek, like
No, it's not that. It's like, I understand how airlocks work.
Right.
The problem is like, as written in the module, there is no such thing called as a bulkhead door. There's nothing written in there. So you guys would be like, is this an airlock door? And I would look at the key, and it says airlock, but in the way that we were playing it wasn't an airlock. It was a bulkhead door. So every time there's a little bit of hesitation on my part, which looked like ignorance, which was not ignorance. It was actually just me sort of going, no, it's not an airlock door. It's actually a bulkhead door. If we're assuming, like what Mike said, that an airlock door actually goes out to the void of space,
right?
Then all those doors, which they're calling airlocks, are not airlocks, right? So it's that kind of vagueness that was rubbing me. And we should probably stop, because we're going
no, I have a question.
I
have a question about that though. So because I have briefly glanced at it, but in the off chance I might ever want to play it again with somebody else, I don't want to read everything, So the module, and you've mentioned certain vaguenesses, and like, I know it's supposed to be like tight, trimmed, easy to parse, like get through it, boom, boom, boom. So 2 questions about that for you, John. One is like, basically, did it work? Did trimming that stuff out, which I'm sure Luke could have easily added, but did trimming that out bring it down to a manageable length, bring it down to a usable document? And 2, like, I mean, maybe we were just approaching the play style all wrong. We were, as David says, we were thinking, in that 3-dimensional way, and really what we should have been thinking of is more of like you gotta work your way through the maze, right? Because there isn't a way around it.
Go ahead, David.
Well, it was a question for John. So
it was a question for John, so I want John to go, and I can comment afterwards.
Well, it's I would say maybe a little bit less than halfway through the campaign, I think we made that adjustment as far as ditching the OSR dungeon crawling space, and I think we adapted well, frankly, to what the expectations for Mothership play were, and Gradient Descent specifically. But the parsability of the module is bar none one of the best I've ever seen. When you compare it to our previous adventure, which was the Halls of Arden Bull, and I love Rick Barton and the whole crew over there as well. But that's very difficult to parse. Like, the best thing that ever happened to me in that was near the end when we got that Python code, which just gave me 30,000 links. That was great. But with 64 pages or whatever Gradient Descent was, with so much content that's crammed in there, and it was so easy to find whatever I needed on a given moment. It was really like lightning fast, and that's not because of like hyperlinking or bookmarks or PDF stuff. That's literally like the info design, color usage, symbol use, symbology, and all that kind of stuff that was used in the module. It's excellent. You can anyone can pick this up and run it with basically zero prep. But the other half of it is, and I have heard, I can't verify this, so maybe people who are more in tune with Sean McCoy and Luke Gehring can correct me, but I believe that Luke Gehring himself is actually a rather wordy fellow. He likes
I
he
can
likes
relate.
I mean, in his prose, he likes to write
Yes.
florid descriptions.
Yes.
And I've read some of his other work. He's very, very well versed.
Incredible writer. Yeah.
Incredible writer. Yeah. I think I have heard that he actually kind of butted heads a little bit with not in a mean way or anything like that, but just in a creative way with Sean McCoy, who I believe the creator of Mothership, who was the one that actually did the layout, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Or maybe oversaw the art direction and layout of the actual product and forced Luke to actually cut back on a lot of stuff that Luke would rather have had in there.
This is very familiar, John. We just did this with the writing project we're working on.
Yes, very true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I
I'm
you know,
the wordy one in that case.
I found this out after having been playing Mothership for creating Descent for a while, but my dream would be to play the campaign with Luke's version of unedited version of creating Descent, because it probably would have given me all of that info that I really, really wanted
in 4 volumes.
Yeah. And this and lastly on that point, the Goldilocks of this for me in my personal jamming style is something like Dolmenwood. Right. Because Dolmenwood is like, for me, is the perfect marriage in all of Necrotic's Gnome style, is that it's the perfect marriage of rich detail that really sparks your imagination, but also in that very concise, well laid out info design. It's really a unique thing, and I think everyone should give Gavin more props than he probably does get for his incredible ability to lay out rich detail in a curt manner, like you know what I mean. It's incredible.
I'll give props to anyone who gets anything published. It is so hard. So
yes,
props right there.
I don't know if it's I'll circle back as my last comment on this, just because I think it's really interesting. Back to the idea of like using the tunnel metaphor up and down between floors, right? Mike, you're of course correct that like in a literal simulationist sense, there'd be so much ductwork and things in between floors, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't make sense. But I think like in terms of going back to the sort of incentive cycle, in terms of a game design, you want to, as a GM, be able to reward curiosity as often as you can. And if you're going to break reality, I think you tend to want to break it trending towards rewarding rather than shutting down.
100%.
Right. And so although there are like style differences between the games we're playing, I also think a lot of it, again, really does come down just to spatiality, because when all else fails, if we just can visualize a space and its relationship to each other, we can kind of figure out the rest, right? The words that we use, the trappings that we attach to it, the genre, etc., helps. But if John is put into a position or and it's not to say that John couldn't have, sorry, John, figured out a way to give us a tunnel or something like that, right? But if he's put into a position in which there's a higher frequency of negating as a response rather than permitting, because of that sort of like negative space of information, it can become frustrating, I think.
It was,
and it creates sort of momentum in that direction. So like we adapted, I think, appropriately, and I think it still was very, very rich, right? But it really, in a funny way, I mean, this is the illustrator in me, but in a funny way, I really do feel like a lot of it can be resolved by like sitting down with a notepad and really like doodling what we think this space looks like beyond the abstraction that's represented in the book itself, which is beautiful and effective, but doesn't operate in the same terms that a traditional OSR map does, where we really can comprehend the space, because we have a macro map, which is represented almost as like circuitry, right? Beautiful, elegant, useful as a macro, but then and then we have like some renders of the space station to get a sense of the scale and things like that. But we're not really getting to the middle space there between the two.
I agree.
Can I highlight a comment?
Yeah.
It's actually up from 1025, John, so it's been a while. Mighty Martian, California, was my biggest complaint is that Monarch itself is too nebulous an antagonist. And I think that that's not, I'm not going to take that as like a critique of the adventure. I think that Monarch's, like, it was so hard to parse until the very end what Monarch's actual motivations were, is that I'm kind of wondering, are we just stupid? Or did we just like totally miss like something completely obvious like in that, right?
I mean, it can be both.
I think you guys were great with that. Actually, I thought
Hey,
no, to give you guys props, I
Mhm.
think that that the arc of the plot of that developed, the narrative that kind of emerged, I thought that you guys were spot on in the pacing of like investigating, trying to figure out what was going on, and then eventually like the awakening realization, like, oh shit, like Monarch's doing this, like
Mm.
Dixon, like the double Dixon was, I think, the key episode there, where
That was cool.
like, oh, like you had those hints, like maybe like you were being brain scanned, but what was he using it for?
Mhm.
And then there was the whole Helen thing where Helen popped up again, and you were like, what the fuck is going on with that? And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Dixon showed up back on the bell again, you were like, fuck, he's creating doubles. Like there's
Right.
there's androids that look just like us.
Yeah.
And then like you kind of work out like what his overall plan, like you guys understand what he was after, right? After,
Right.
in the
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. One thing that was really interesting to me, and because there was some questions brought up, people talked about it, like at the end, right? Like we had enough, with the artifacts that we found, we had enough. We could have left, right? We could have left it to its own devices. We could have left. We could have survived. We could have paid our debts and gone off on our merry way. But like one of the key motivations that I had, like through Thulsa, through my characters, were there I could see, like, even with the duplicates, right? Like it was very obvious that this thing's goal were to expand and spread, right? Like dandelion seeds, blown out into space, right?
Mhm.
But the thing that I kept coming back to was that it was impossible with the information that we had to tell which was our true antagonist. Was it Thelema,
Mhm.
the people that we were basically, enslaved to? Or was it Monarch, this unknowable thing that, with all evidence we had at that point, seemed to just want to survive and grow like any other living thing, right?
Right.
And it was only in that last delve, when we went back, that answer was, kind of made clear, at least to the depth that, Monarch was objectively evil,
Right.
It's still, I guess, the question of like, well, okay, you could still weigh, Thelema's evil versus Monarch's at the end of the day. But I mean, for me, that was, until that very last delve, that was a real valid question. And Thulsa wasn't clear on
For sure.
who really,
That's
do we need to fight against?
I never
that's a-
felt that way. I always thought Monarch was totally evil. I never
Yeah,
trusted
me
him
too.
whatsoever. And there was a
Well-
lot of competing theories, and I was prepared for them to be correct. But I
As
think
far as
I would-
as far as Monarch and Thelema, por qué por los dos? Like, I mean, they're like, everybody is bad. Like everybody is.
I
Yeah,
agree.
terrible.
I agree. But to link with Matt, I'm gonna talk some shit. Maybe, I don't know. Whatever.
Uh-oh.
I'll just be me. No, the malevolent superintelligence is the most expected player prejudice from the start, and therefore the least interesting reality for Monarch as a player. That doesn't mean Monarch is good. I really liked Bob Toaster's "I had Monarch call my players rats in the walls" comment, like 5 up, right? Because what we do know about Monarch is that it's essentially unconcerned with us because it has greater things to comprehend, to engage with, et cetera, and we know that the more we disrupt Monarch's ability to do that, the more attention we draw to ourselves, right? And so, like rats in a wall, right, the inconvenience that we provide to Monarch in actionable terms is what yields that malice, which makes sense, right? It's an exterminating sort of principle. You're fucking up my shit, stop, right? I love that, but that doesn't necessarily translate to, I think, the larger psychological themes of the module, which are about, like, at a very like crude level, questioning the veracity of our own humanity, questioning whether being inhuman means to be inhuman, right?
Mhm.
And everything in between. And if that is like, those are the metaphors that the module is trafficking in, Monarch would have to be, like, on some level, an enigma beyond evil, I think.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
I was trying to play him that way. That's
Mhm.
No,
exactly
I
what
think you did a good job playing it that way. But that's why I'm saying, like, when we're talking about Ted and Mike versus Matt and David, if not that there's some competition here, but like in our comprehension of that, I think so much of that expresses itself through the types of characters we're playing as well, and like role playing into them, right? Obviously, I played David as the ultimate version of that sort of thesis on my end. Bunch of Marines being like, this fucking thing is evil, makes perfect sense. And so I think it worked out perfectly within the friction of both player and character, you know, in that way. But I do think it's an interesting dynamic. I think you did a great job, John. That wasn't a criticism of you.
No. I wasn't trying to be defensive. It was. I'll tell you my approach to how I set up the campaign was the Thelema side of things was all created by me, right?
Yeah.
All that framework was me, keying off of like the central themes of Mothership as a game, which you know, I think politically aligns with the five of us, you know,
for sure.
Well, anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, working man sort of thing, right? You know, but my choice to make all of you guys by default a member of a blue collar union. Now we didn't really explore that too much. That probably would have got more into that if we went to Prospero's Dream. I don't want to go into that. But I deliberately set up that dilemma that Matt was talking about: is who is the worst enemy? Is it Thelema or is it Monarch?
Absolutely.
Right. And I set that up, and I like the fact that you could never, even at the very end, it was very difficult to determine who, you know. I think it's very horrific. I think it's perfect for a horror game because it's like for your little characters are overwhelmed from all sides by horrific evil and evil in this term. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but I think the way that Ted is referring to Monarch as evil is just in that Cthulhu sort of way, where it's so beyond evil, so beyond any sort of framework of morality. It's so, what's the word? Not immoral, amoral. It's so amoral that a typical human, you know, a typical blue collar guy would just be like, that's evil. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so beyond our scope of it that you have nothing. It's just a repulsion. It's like a must fight against it sort of thing, or you know.
Well, it's entropy, right? Like
entropy,
if Thelema is like organized, like basically statist, corporate statist, but statist violence. It's a repressive force. We can grok it on human terms because it like affects us in those terms. Monarch is more horrifying because it's entropy. It's us dying one day, period. We can't resist it, right? And that is a horrifying conclusion to manifest, right, through I'm going to be a little.
I think I would say less about entropy and more about sort of the loss of ego. It can just replace you. You are replaceable. And that, you know, I think that's entirely anathema to the human experience. You are not replaceable. You are unique. And here's this thing that is just like, I don't care about you. I'm just going to make new people and make them look like you.
Yes,
that sounds terrifying.
That's horror. Right there. Yeah.
Sure. John called Monarch evil right when David's head blew up. So I'm
one thing that was funny, I don't know if I ever conveyed this, was Thulsa kind of thought it was cool that there could be a duplicate. Like she didn't see anything, and you know, as a pure scientist, she went into this thinking, "Oh, a backup." that's amazing. That's great.
I agree. I mean, we all have, and this would be an interesting thing to go around and talk about as an official sort of topic, but we all have junctures that we land upon that we don't plan for, right, in a game that immediately go, oh, this is sticky. I'm going to attach myself to it, and it will clarify my position, right? Dixon coming back was the most obvious one for David within the conversation we're having here. That was a juncture to decide what I felt as David in this universe about Monarch, about Thelema, about life itself. And I'm sure we all had moments like that, but I think it's, you know, it's one we couldn't have planned for, but was obvious when it was in our hands, right? So yeah, I totally get it, Matt.
So, and very well played, John. That was a brilliant moment, and you did it very well with that episode.
Absolutely, yeah. Mike, go ahead.
Streaver has a comment from 1039 about just kind of Monarch's motivations. What does the module give any hints to why Monarch mostly ignores Delvers? It's actually, is it actually just this thing is beyond human concerns? And my thing about it is, what my thoughts were, is that Monarch is kind of like at war with, not at war, but it has two motivations. A, it doesn't really want to deal with people, but it needs people to come to the station and lures them there with the artifacts so that they come with their, you know, stupid greed and like whatever. and then allows it to copy them and send them back out, right?
That's right.
It kind of needs that motivation, right? But at the same time, it doesn't really want to be bothered with us, you know? Is that
Yes. That's the way I interpreted it. Yes. Yeah. That's
I
the
had
way
an
I read it.
interesting thought on that from beginning. Like, so the name itself, gradient descent, means this learning process, right? It's an AI learning process of testing things and to the point of failure and learning from that failure and going forward, right? And so I think that as part of that ecosystem of why would Monarch, draw people in and then, kill them, essentially, right? Like, why would you why would you lure rats into your walls if you don't want them in there? And I think that at least the way I saw it was as part of the core, we were entertainment, right? We were part of its mission, is like to learn the same way that it had the, that floor of the children that it was studying, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were there for. That's why it would lure things in with these artifacts that had incredible value.
Yes.
Of course, he's going to lure people in to watch, see what they do, see how they fail, with the utter confidence that anytime they prove to be a danger to anything, you can, incinerate them instantly.
You're absolutely right, Matt. And that's the way that I interpreted and how I played Mother in my head anyways, is that he was so beyond morality that life and death meant it was only a learning experience for him. It didn't really matter. Like, of course he would kill somebody if they presented a threat, but they rarely did. It was more just like, Monarch was basically thinking to himself, I learned just as much from a random death than I do from a random life walking around. It's all good to me. Everything is a lesson. I'm constantly learning. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Virg the Kong 944 said, "Is Cromwell duplicate incident when David decided to dive into Monarch's teachings?" And just to relate to what you guys are saying, I think there's
Minotaur's teachings, just FYI.
Sorry, Minotaur, Mother, Monarch, Mommy Dearest.
You were playing around before that, weren't you?
I feel like you went down that path like right away.
Yeah.
Well, but here, and that's what I'm going to say. I'm trying not to go long. I think there's something interesting that immediately a sacrament represented within that environment. Because, I think some of the, if we're, pulling from Aliens, the default assumptions of the alien universe, or the sort of like xenomorphic space, is at best maybe a capricious Old Testament God exists. But I think for the most part, it's a fairly pessimistic atheist space. It is a nothing exists space. And both in the movies that Scott made or Blade Runner, all these sorts of things within that genre of sci-fi are sort of trying to tease at a conceptualization of like God in the machine, literally, or just like how the sort of theory of divinity as a philosophical project can still be made within a space that is totally uncaring about you, and how there's still value to be found in it on some level, whether we believe in it literally or not. And I think Minotaur, although like the symbolism of Minotaur with the maze kind of makes me wonder if there was a twist there, but Minotaur becomes an embodiment of that sort of almost like Christ-like figure within the logic of Monarch, because again, this is only from afar because we never interacted with it, so I don't know, which is why it's such an interesting thing I wish we had, right? If we perceive sort of someone who is ostensibly protecting the fallen, right, who is taking care of them, who is sort of a sin eater perhaps, right, is an interesting figure within a otherwise monarch style total sort of like disinterest in the livelihoods of its subjects, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so immediately when a sacrament symbolically came up, I was like, oh, well, of course, never mind, I'm an android, so it's so much more interesting. But even further, as we learned about Minotaur, those themes became more and more intriguing for the reason I just stated. I won't go further, but
related to that, the comment I just put up by Jacob Lee, I think, is that our boy Brawler Jake? I think it is. He says, you all got Monarch all wrong. Monarch's goal is to save humanity from itself, from its late stage capitalist post-humanist world. That's actually, it's incorrect. But what you did nail, Jacob, is that's the Minotaurs.
Yes,
That is the Minotaur's goal.
I figured. That because it's kind of I mean, I say I figured. I'm not trying to act like I knew, but it's that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the symbols that are sort of present within that space and their relationality and the way that Garion does a really incredible job of constructing those systems of symbols. Right, even just at first blush, you can start sort of like imagining them. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do wish that you had managed to.
Oh, me too.
He's a really cool character, and there's a lot of one thing that Luke does really cool is that they have a whole page that's called Fallout in Gradient Descent, where it's basically like an epilogue. Like, here's what happens if this, like, if you end the campaign with this, then this happens, and it extrapolates all of Monarch's plans, and one of the things is like what happens if you bring Minotaur back to the Bell, or if the Minotaur is freed, or if you slice it away from Monarch. All the things happen, and the Minotaur is actually is the savior of humanity. It is a concrete thing that actually is a messiah, and it ushers in like a whole new age of like a golden age of humanity as it teaches everyone love and peace and everything like that. It's pretty amazing.
No, it's very Abramic in the way that it's constructed there. I mean, despite the fact that we're using like Greek, or I mean, is the Minotaur Greek or Roman?
Greek.
Yeah. Despite the fact that we're using Greek trappings, I mean that's what it is, right? I mean, it is a sort of Abramic, sort of Semitic conceptualization of a Messiah.
Yeah, not meeting him is one of my biggest regrets. And
I'll be right back, guys. Sorry.
Sure, no problem. The cool way that they wrote him in the module was that the Minotaur is horrific to look upon. It's like I was actually kind of a little bit anxious about, if you did encounter him, how I would be able to convey how awful he looked, because it's supposed to be the most hideous thing you could possibly see. I'm not looking at the module right now, but I'm pretty sure it sort of transforms into whatever your character's greatest repulsion would have been, and so it leads to this scenario. Man. It would probably have induced like the panic cycle fallout sort of thing. And so you would have to be battling at the same time, where all evidence whenever you were communicating with it was that it was a good thing, but your whole body was telling you, no, it's horrible. Like, kill it. It would have been pretty fun.
That's an interesting idea though, that you mentioning the Fallout gave me, which is like in a game like Mothership, which the lethality is high and there's not necessarily a whole lot of expectation that you would play the same character in more than one, adventure. You could, as they've done with like, sort of the whole, all the Alien movies, all taking place kind of in the same universe, that kind of thing. You could keep the Fallout from your Gradient Descent campaign.
Yeah.
In the next few iterations of game you played with totally different characters, completely different part of the universe.
That's the expectation, I think.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's
super cool.
Yeah. That's very Shadows over Bogenhaven, Death on the Reich.
Yep.
Very much Enemy Within. Yeah.
Mike bringing in his fantasy Warhammer K.
Someday I'm going to get you guys into play.
like a mega campaign of Mothership, where you could actually string together a lot of these scenarios that the community and the official Tuesday night games have produced would have been really cool, because if you were if Gradient Descent was sort of interspersed within it as like a common thing, right? I think the expectation is actually, in a typical mega dungeon fashion, is that you dip into the deep every once in a while and you pay a bribe with an artifact and you get out past the blockade and you go have other fun missions, like you go back to Prospero's Dream and you look at the assignment board and go do something else that's crazy. But the deep keeps drawing you back because all the really good shit's in there, right? And then you slowly find out through your campaign what Monarch's big plan is, and then you rethink all those adventures you had and how many people were actually infiltrators that you were actually, you know what I mean? It would have been super cool,
Yeah.
But, so can I just mention something mechanic wise that I thought was kind of at odds, right? So do we want to maybe you just hit upon it, John, and the idea that you're supposed to go in, hang out in the deep, and then leave and then come back. Is there were like kind of two friction points on there. Number one, we were kind of sent in with you owe us $100 million, don't come back till you get it, right? So we didn't really feel like we could go make a day jaunt over to Prospero's Dream and like hang out and like depressurize. Right? So there was that, but then the mechanics of the game and the lethality that Ted was talking about is almost a little bit at odds with a game that is based on exploration and discovery, right? Like, even though we had a lot of characters that had good skill stats to do stuff like that, every time we ran into something that was just a little bit shady, like somebody would just get lit up and then be like completely detrimentally like hosed for like the next like 9 sessions or whatever.
You got to learn to hide in lockers, Mike. Come
Well,
on.
true. Like no doubt about that. I mean, honestly, one of the highlights for the campaign for me was actually putting down the hunter. I love that. That was for me.
fun.
Like
that was fun.
that was the shit. I was like, oh, we're gonna snipe him, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
was really sad I missed that episode.
yeah, but overall, like if you're supposed to be exploring
Mhm.
and you're not relying on your ability to continue to explore by finding traps, which we're really good at, finding secret doors, which we're really good at, finding like ways to avoid danger, which we're really good at, but it's
Healing
almost
potions.
like it's almost like haul monsters. By the way, you have 5 armor points, you're lit up, you're destroyed. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like it feels like it's very at odds. And also, I want to make sure David was back for this. Having an android in the party was the absolute fucking worst. Absolute fucking worst.
Look, I have
Every fucking
dedicated
time you made a check, and we're all like, "Oh, double the fucking stress, double the fucking like."
Look,
We're all
Mike-
just like, "Fuck."
Like ever since Snell died, I've made it my principle to be the heel of the party, and it's worked out really well.
All right, so we are. There's 1,000 things we could
Yeah.
talk about, but unfortunately, we don't have 1,000 minutes. We're about an hour in. How do you guys feel about switching to Conquer questions?
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
Yeah.
There's some good ones.
absolutely. Are we just going to go down the list in order, John? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I'll read them out, and
Okay.
you guys just chime in depending on who they're addressing, and we can just
Yeah.
have our thoughts, and we'll try to go through some of these things. Thank
Cool.
you to our conquerors in advance for
Yeah.
submitting these questions. They're all excellent. We may have already addressed some of these things in our talk, so just be aware that might be the case. Actually, we can do what we did with Arden Bull. I'll start off, and then someone else can read the next one or whatever. Okay. Okay. So first up, Berserker Grunt asks, are there any house rules or modifications you'd add as the GM or like to see as players to this module specifically to make it easier to run and play? You guys want to go first?
I can just say what I already said, which I think would be really useful for someone to make a homebrew, more granular schematic of the space station.
Okay.
Just a little more connective tissue. Maybe it's just a duct map, as silly as that sounds. I think that would
Hard
just give
agree.
a little bit of one extra layer
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
vellum to put on top of that.
I had 2 thoughts on this. One is because we struggled with this a few times. Really make it clear from the beginning how your vac suits and your armor and all that stuff are going to interact, and how bulky they are and how difficult it is. Because we kind of like wandered back and forth on that a little bit. It was kind of a mess. We got to a good place with it, but still, it was like always a question. Where's your vac suit? Do you have your thing? Do I have? Oh, I have it with me. Whatever.
Right.
So
Yeah.
clarifying that from the beginning would be good.
Yeah.
Also, and this is purely self-serving because Thulsa did have the high score of the campaign, I'll have you know, but utilizes
I
that,
think we should get rid of that rule. I
in
think it's,
some way other than just giving shit to your fellow players, which in itself has its value,
A value, yes.
right?
No,
But
yeah.
and I'm not saying there has to be some kind of meta currency, but you use it for something.
It'd
Use
be
it
a
for
cute,
something.
it'd be a cute homebrew thing to tack on because it wouldn't be too intrusive.
That was
you
me.
know?
Because to give credit where credit's due, in Mothership, they do actually provide a whole list of things like that you could use for the high score thing. But all of them are basically meta currency, and I am
John and his meta currency.
I don't like meta currencies. I just don't. But
One day we'll get
that's
you.
me.
Okay.
What about you, Ted?
No, I thought there were, apart from, I think Matt's quite correct about the vac suit thing. That was a ruling we should have worked out sooner. I didn't think there was really much need for house rules. There were some other things I would change, but that comes up in a later question.
I'm just going to say that character recovery to me was like onerous, and maybe I'm sure deliberately so, but that just kind of rubs me against, the wrong way, because if you're sidelining your character for 4 weeks to get your broken collarbone fixed, I'm just kind of like, ugh, it just feels like it's a tax that doesn't really need to be implemented. So I would have made healing much easier, and probably like stress recovery, and maybe a little bit better like on Ben's recovery, just so you could keep the adventure rolling, so we're not spending so much time in the bell trying to like recover.
That ties into mine actually, which is my addition would have been to, which I ended up doing the campaign, was to make the bell a port, so that you had the ability to do shortly. Like that's not in the module for anyone out there. Like the bell's not a port. So a lot of that recovery availability, even though it was extremely onerous,
Right.
wasn't even in existence in the published module.
Agreed. I
However-
remember when you made that rule, it was like it was
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
game
good.
changing.
I will say though, again, to give credit where credit's due, like we were talking about earlier when David was gone, is that the expectation, I think, is that this is just another scenario that your characters go through in between other missions and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
the expectation of
Space,
going,
space trucker.
yeah, exactly. So you go out to a port and you do rest for that long and recuperate. The deep does what the deep does, and then every once in a while you go back. But it didn't work for our campaign because, similar to Arden Pool, we were focused on only remaining in there, which I still think is a good choice because we had a limited time with the campaign, right?
Yeah.
It's a, so
We're playing
we had to-
short episodes. I still am amazed that we get as much done as we do. in
no
this
shit.
short-
But
short
I do
episode.
agree, Mike, that I probably should have instituted just more short spans of
Sure.
recovery just to accommodate our particular campaign. Yeah.
I mean, David was down like a wound for like maybe like half the campaign. You know,
Yeah.
What
or
else
at
is
least a
new?
third.
What else is new?
Yeah,
But
Humble
all in all, though, like I thought that the flow of the
Ah.
stress death spiral, like the up and down and all that kind of stuff, you only died from wounds a couple of times,
Mhm.
right? I know because of David's awesome overlay thing, I was only hitting that wound button very, very infrequently.
Right.
I thought it worked pretty amazingly, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I do. But my final tack on comments are my Columbo moment. I do want to highlight the vac suit thing because I think it's a really good point from Matt, and it is maybe not a module thing. So I mean, it is in the sense that I think the information presentation could be cleaner with just how they work. But I know that there's like editing and a lot of things that involve in that. But Matt obviously won the campaign. It's true. But you know, in a different world, and this is the thing, is like we prep as little as we can and we figure it out as we go because it's the nature of what we're doing in 3D6. But I would have been very fine with a much more punitive application of vac suits if we understood them as such earlier, right? And that's the thing, because that would change the rhythm of how we delved. It only becomes a quandary or a quagmire when we've established a rhythm and then we realize, ooh, actually we need to alter this. And it's not the end of the world, but it's hard to do when you have player buy-in in a certain pattern because we've already acculturated our minds to play in a certain way. And all of a sudden, if we're vac suiting in a certain way, it's easier to hand wave. But I think there's a very interesting game where the vac suits are so heavy outside of the vacuum of space that they're ditched in every airlock we enter into. Like we can hardly move with them on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that would change the lethality and everything else, blah, 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 blah. So
for
I think that's really an interesting one.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ted, why don't you read us the next one?
All right. 3C-273 says, to all involved, how did you feel about the lethality of the game? It seems like there weren't many deaths, but the feel of the table might have been different. And you guys are experienced gamers. Well, I would say that I did expect it to be more lethal. I think Mike mentioned that earlier. On the other hand, I think that the sort of pacing and the number of episodes and then the way that Dixon went out seemed pretty good, actually. More or less what I would have expected. It would have been really unfun to lose a dude after one play session. Not that I would know anything about that. But Dixon's death was cool. It was timed appropriately, I think, and so that sort of thing went on. I do feel, and this I could talk about this as a mechanics of the system question, but this might be a good place for it. Cast your mind back to the Aliens movie when the Marines realize there's dozens of aliens in the ceiling above. They drop down and there's pulse rifle fire everywhere, aliens blowing up left and right.
Game over.
Marines
Man.
going down, game over, game over. I wanted to see that kind of lethality, right?
Yeah.
I felt like a Marine with a pulse rifle against 15 security androids. They were not mooks. They were at least as strong as a Marine. And I felt like, 15, guys should be able to overwhelm one Marine, perhaps. Yeah. The fight against the Hunter seemed appropriate, but like, I felt like, particularly at the end there, and this is maybe I'm just kind of whining, right? But like, Hubble is in a defended, in place position, gun at the ready. The door opens up. He should have mowed down half of those guys without even blinking. In a real life environment, you walk into a room like that and somebody just opens fire with an automatic weapon.
Sure.
You don't just shrug that off and keep coming. Now, he missed. He shouldn't have missed. It was a fucking fish in a barrel.
Well,
So there's some things about the mechanics that I think, or possibly even just the way that the androids were, envisioned.
There's a D100 issue there too. Worth
Yeah.
discussing,
I mean,
but-
I rolled, I missed by one. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But like the point being, there's like things about lethality that can work both ways, right?
yes.
I would have gotten my rocks off shooting a ton of androids and still dying would have been awesome. And I would have had to run. And I think going, heading down that column, trying to escape and having them pile in after me and just filling the shaft with bullets. Yeah, he was dead. Like that made sense. So I wanted to kill more things, John. That's all I think about the lethality of this game.
Well, and I'll springboard on that by saying, again, I'm going to keep talking about rhythm, but like our most frequent combat encounter was a stress roll.
Mm-hmm.
And although I like the stress system, I think in terms of player feel, it feels better to have those deaths that we talked about. Because I do think stress rolls are micro deaths. Emerge from, whether it be violence or not, really, really explicit encounters, at least equal to the fear aspect, which I wouldn't want to take away the things that are disturbing freak us out aspect. So I don't know that it is necessarily a reduction there. But it is true that like combat for us was keeping our heads on our shoulders. It makes sense, but it feels like you're encountering an abstraction rather than like asserting agency into the environment against the thing, if that makes sense, right? And that's something that's probably a balance of rules, players, GM, etc. No criticism to any of us, right? But that's like it's a hard thing to grok when you're new to a system, right? It's yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
I had a few thoughts on this. So, this is a horror game, and horror is not about the deaths that happen. It's about the tension that leads up to the deaths, right? Deaths are punctuation, right? Deaths are short, they're quick, they happen quickly, and they happen in a moment. But it's all the tension leading up to that. It's the room where the monster is not in. Right? Like that's the part of this that's the part of this game where you hear things in the walls, or you think you get in this weird space. What in here can kill me? Is that thing going to come to life and jump out at me or not? So in that sense, I think that it was incredibly successful in terms of like, and that stress mechanic is built into this, right? As you watch those numbers grow from little things, right? Like little opportunities that you miss, little things that you try and that number creeps up and creeps up and creeps up. That for me was the real juice and the real horror of this thing, is that not the deaths that happen, but the anticipation that a death might.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
I agree with that 100%.
And that was true in AV too. For frankly, as we were being hunted various times, it's cool. I like that tension.
Yeah.
Mike?
I don't really have too much more to add. You guys were pretty, and we want to move on to the next comment. So I'll just say that I found combat encounters and situations like the hunter to be, for me, more satisfying than just like nameless like androids. And I kind of agree with Ted. I think the scary part of the androids, the security androids, is when there's like 50 of them. But if there's like 3 of them, it shouldn't even really be a fight. Like they should be the swarm, and the hunter should be the singular monster that you're actually like terrified of. So I would just say that, like I think you could balance them. They don't have to be as strong as they are individually to be a threat to the players if there's 100 of them coming at you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, Matt, why don't you hit us with the next one?
Okay, next one is from Dungeon Maestro. How much of a drive or desire did you have to track down the Minotaur and pursue the Sacrament angle? Was it just not an opportunity that came up, or was it more following the party leads versus individual curiosity? We talked about it a little bit.
Talked about it, yeah.
I think as a team, I can say that there was a lot of desire to go there, but also as a team, well, okay, I won't speak for everybody. For some of us, there was a lot of desire to go there. There was a lot of curiosity, but also just the way that we tend to play, we get into these like tracks. Like we tend to like say, oh, once you go into this space, here's the problem, and we tend to want to solve that instead of leaving things hanging. So we'll get into a track that leads into a loop, and then it leads to, another things where going back to the Minotaur is one of the things that we want to do, but is it more pressing to go back to the Ackler and get our things that we dropped off? Or so I think it was just like the flow of the game that kind of drew us in other directions. But yeah, we really wanted to go.
I thought Minotaur was a trap. I wanted nothing to do with him.
I was same
well, and the naming really conveys that much. I think this is a good juncture to again, like, remind everyone of sort of the artifice, the structure that we're playing under, right? We're not playing 4-hour sessions where like meandering and decision making is baked into the table like it would be at a friend game, where we can be sort of like a little more circumspect, where we're going to have those kinds of conversations live, and we still do get in the weeds, don't get me wrong, but
oh my god,
the result of that very early on, again, peek behind the curtain, we've mentioned it before, is like we decided we would start discussing, especially because, as John said, he doesn't want to have the burden of being, I mean, he still does an enormous amount of work, to be clear, doesn't want to have the burden of having to prep every little thing, right, and hold us by the hands and guide us through that. And so we have a private Discord where we discuss the last episode, what our objectives are as players. John is a silent sort of like watcher of that, and we kind of suss out those conversations behind the scenes rather than on camera, right? Yeah. And it is often that we will have equal interest in many things, but frankly, like, we have a show because we have a camera on our game, and it requires us to be very deliberate with those decisions, and that will tend to skew, like, towards urgency, which is not a bad thing. It keeps us dynamic, and I think it makes for a really interesting result. But it is something worth like mentioning in the architecture of our play that has had to adapt to being on camera, right?
And in my way of adapting to the OSR play style, when I always call it my epiphany, is that now I like to in all of these campaigns that we've been playing is dangle a lot of threads. So that there can be no accusations of railroading, right? Like if I wanted you to meet the Minotaur, I would have had you meet the Minotaur. You know what I mean? But I just was like, here's Noriko, and she has this little interesting thing, and here's here's Arcady, and here's so you had like all these different things, and then you guys get to make the decision about what you want to interact with. But if you zigged towards the Mind Thief and then decided to zag towards the Minotaur, cool by me, man.
It's up to us. Yeah, we have full agency in that.
Yeah, full agency, exactly. Yeah.
I want to tack on a question here for you, John. Whether it was on the tables, like the random encounter tables, or some of the threads that you presented to us, were there some or any that you really kind of wish we would have tugged on, but we didn't?
Minotaur was definitely one.
Okay.
I was prepared and looking forward to you going all the way with the Mind Thief. That was a really cool thing, because you would have seen a lot of stuff on the way to the Mind Thief, and then the Mind Thief itself would have been cool. But
then Matt had to chop that tree down.
Yep, thanks,
yeah,
Matt.
The whole level 2 Eden, which is where the labyrinth is, where the Minotaur is really, really fun. And you dipped your toes in really early, right? Where Sharp actually made friends with the Chosen. The whole Chosen Fallen thing was really fun, the dynamic to interact with, like the Chosen King and everything.
No, it was a trap.
Going in that direction to get to the AI core, get to the pseudo flesh farms would have been pretty fun, because you would have had to interact with the Chosen King. Not regrets, but it's just like paths less chosen sort of thing, yeah.
There's something there which is interesting to me, in that I suspect, and I guess it's not meant as a criticism to us, but with the structure we were just talking about, I suspect there's instances like Eden, right, where something is so compelling and so interesting and so complex, and when we have smaller, more tangible goals at hand, that we will tend to think, let's come back to this when we can.
It's like too big of an issue. Yeah.
The problem is there will always be new shit. Right.
Yes.
And there will always be new shit with urgency, because of the nature of the entire game being a pressure cooker.
Right.
And so, ironically, some of the things we might find most interesting, we don't end up getting back to.
It's just like Ardenvool.
Just like AV.
Just like Ardenvool.
And it's like, it is sort of a bird in hand thing, where we're still figuring out when to make that decision. It's tough. It's really tough.
It's hard. Yeah. David, why don't you read us the next one?
If you insist. Isaac Spencer says, for John specifically, how would you change the module to be more warden or referee friendly?
Let's see. we've talked about it. Expansion of details is the big one, right? This is my personal opinion. I know that there are a lot of referees out there that love gradient descent because it gives them that opportunity to really use those very curt phrases as spark points to leapfrog with creativity. I think my improv abilities with GMing have increased since I've jumped into the OSR, but I am by no means a master. I vastly prefer to GM publish material well with my own additions, right? Like I like to infuse things. I did that all over the place with AV. I made AV my own, right? Mothership, a gradient descent specifically. Not, I wouldn't say it's implicit that you should springboard off of every phrase in that book, right? And I just don't have it in me. It's not for me. I'm a creative person. I view myself as a creative person, but it's asking an incredible mental load. Some people have that capacity. I do not. I just don't, and I'm not willing to put in the effort to prepare. That's not a word. To go the opposite direction, which is to prepare in advance all of like the details that the module is lacking. So in my ideal version of gradient descent, it would be that Goldilocks thing that Gavin does, which is just enough detail that I can use it to springboard easily off of. It's not easy for me to springboard off of stuff in gradient descent. It was an effort every time, usually with good, successful, fun results when I was able to do it. But it's just asked of you that like constantly, all the time, right? And that's just with the description of the publications. Then there's all the input that you guys are doing, where you're asking me very relevant scientific questions, and you're asking me to sort of springboard the natural, what would be the answers is, and it's just like a huge mental load at all times. It's just like my brain froze so many times, So that's my answer to that one. Mike.
Okay. This next question is from Pendulous. Hi, Pendulous.
Pendulous. We
Gradient
love
descent.
Our favorite name, by the way.
Yeah. Gradient descent seems like a very psychological, existential horror kind of theme. Are there other themes in the Motherverse that you find interesting? Space truckers, space westerns, cyberpunk. I'll go first, and then we'll go around the horn. I love all of those themes. The idea of space truckers, a space. I mean, you're yes, but cyberpunk for me is probably the one, just because I'm such a junkie for that genre that I would probably lean into the most. And I don't know that Motherverse would, or Mothership would be necessarily the system for that. I'm very cyborg curious as far as games go. So,
hey, 2026 is the year for it, Mike.
I'm going to be
lots of marriages are falling to that problem.
I'm going to be looking for a copy of that at GaryCon, so I'm going to be on the hunt for that.
Right on.
Are we going around the horn? So am I next? Or
yeah, sure.
There's no real horn this time.
I love space trucking. I love Mothership. I love Traveler. I'm never going to bounce off of some space trucking. And as probably everyone knows, playing a dirtbag union, dude, playing a cyborg was fun for me because it was a mix of what I would normally do. I would generally go for a teamster.
We should have killed you. We should have killed you.
You should have killed me from. Look, I gave you many chances. I was never discreet about where I was at.
No, every single time we had to make a check.
Everything was on the sleeves. Yeah.
I'll say about Cyberpunk, I also love Cyberpunk, and this is a bit of a picadillo. I have a problem with how most games gamify Cyberpunk, because I think that they turn it into an endorsement of the themes rather than a critique of the themes by virtue of how attractive playing a fucking coked out Adderall heroin gun bunny is, and it is incredibly fun. So it's hard to resist that, because of course you're going to play that. But I actually think in some ways, to contrast a bit with Mike, things like Gradient Descent, Mothership in general are thematically more cyberpunk than other cyberpunk games.
Yes.
Because of those themes.
Because the dystopia.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I really would love to play a cyberpunk game. I've been hard pressed to find one that I enjoy for the reasons I said.
It's all cyber, but no punk. That's
right.
Look, we need to remember that the first illustrate, not that this is cyberpunk per se, we need to remember that the first space marines were cops beating the shit out of punks. The earliest illustrations in the Warhammer universe were utter criticisms, right? And even in that universe, there's critique there, but it's so thoroughly embedded under the attractive aesthetic
Exactly.
of power.
There used
that
to be
it's
critique.
Yeah,
just
that's gone
not-
now.
It's
gone
just
now.
not there. There's
Yeah.
a reason it was so easy to make it mimic for MAGA, but
Yeah.
I'll stop
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But
You're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm pro Space Trekker. I like it a lot. My favorite parts of the original Alien movie are the two guys down below decks bitching about their union pay and they want more
Hell
shares.
yeah.
and
100%.
Yes.
They're very cool.
Yep.
I also like the fact that no one listens to Ripley and she's the only one who survives, which I think is great. But as far as Cyberpunk goes, I feel the same way David just said. I think that with the added thing that I've played it a lot in college and not since then, because honestly, the game, while very fun, did not live up to the literature.
Right.
And I preferred to read it than play it.
Yes.
But I like playing the trucker thing. I like, when we did, various sorts of trucker kind of things in fantasy games over the years, where you're buying goods and got to move from there and there's adventures along the way. And, and I get off on that kind of thing. In the second Aliens movie with the Marines, I love a good bug hunt. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just one comment on Ted. I think Ridley Scott well observed in Alien. The best lesson of Jaws, which was the family dinner scene, is the center of the entire premise.
Yes.
That's something Spielberg has gotten right through most of his career. It's something that
Yes.
Scott got right a couple times. He got it very right in Alien. And I think
Mhm.
there's a conversation happening between those two movies that no one's talked about yet. Now we must.
that dinner scene really does set everybody's character up perfectly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
My answer to this is I don't care if I'm a trucker or a space cowboy or an android cyber dude, whatever. The thing I want to do in Mothership still is I want to go to a place where it's full of monsters and they're going to try to chase me and eat me. And I just want to use my wits to try to maybe survive.
That couldn't be arranged.
I'd be down with
That
that.
can be arranged.
Right. Like I really like the psychological blah, blah, blah. It was really fun to get into, especially in a larger campaign. But I haven't had a chance yet to play one of those typical Mothership modules where there are monsters there. You got to go in and do something and they're going to try to get you.
Yep. I'm also with the guys where space trucking is. I'm always for that. I think it's just a great genre. I like the aliens stuff. I like the space marine. I'm looking forward to like Wages of Sin for Mothership, or like the whole bounty hunter thing. But I prefer the alien style rather than the alien style. But as far as
I agree. Yeah.
completely out of that genre of sci-fi, I've always really wanted to either run or play a very classic golden age space opera game, like not Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, I'm always down
Like
for
Buck
Star Wars
Rogers
games.
kind of thing.
Like Buck Rogers and Flash
Yeah.
Gordon sort of thing,
Yes.
where you really don't have to worry about any of the science. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just like it's like pew pew ray guns and crazy robots and
Ships just work. You don't have to worry about like being sucked out into the vacuum of space.
yeah, like some dude just wearing like a leotard, but he has like a helmet on. He can survive in
That'll work.
space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
I need the undead we're fighting to be cracked, NASA helms with a skull inside.
Yeah, right. Who's up next for the next question?
I
I think
think.
it's your
Is it
turn.
me? Mike, didn't you read?
I
you read
did.
one? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Where are we here?
Scoot.
Okay. Scoot 15. How do the mechanics affect your respective play styles / GM style, and what of that change / effect do you think will carry over into other games? Go ahead, guys.
I don't
I'll
think
go
we
first.
ever.
We'll just go around the horn. Sorry. I think for me, like the mechanics, I tried to play this game a little bit more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but a little bit more of like open to exploration, right?
Mhm.
Someone made the comment about how I went to go investigate the ghost kind of thing, just kind of like I tried to do that, and then I found that you weren't really rewarded in this game for like honestly an openly approaching exploration. You ended up getting like scalpels to the face. So I think
That's
it
good shit, man.
probably
What are you talking about?
made
Well,
me
tomato.
then more cautious. And I think actually rather than carrying over to the next game, it's going to be a matter of basically just adjusting to that new game. Like we were not benefited by carrying over our Arden Rule play style to this game. So I don't think we would be benefited by playing this way into our next campaign. So I think it's more going to be like just kind of like, clearing out my cache and deleting all my cookies and just going forth.
great analogy, Mike. I think
Yeah.
that that's going to be what it is, because the more different types of games we play, where the core premise isn't just rules mechanics different, it's entire philosophically different, is we're going to need to reset every time and approach it. There's some things that'll carry over. I mean, I think over the years of playing together as a group, we've learned a lot about good warden, refereeing, GMing. We've learned a lot
For sure.
about playing, communication, those sorts of things. But I think there's still, every time there's going to have to be, when we start playing Dallas, for example, we're going to have to really lean into the whole, oil baron thing and really need to do our
reframe
homework.
everything. But just before Matt steps on, sorry, Matt, that I consider that to be a feature and not a bug, Ted.
I agree.
Of the OSR. I think it's really
Yeah.
cool that the OSR, everyone who's outside the OSR kind of pictures it as this very specific thing. And I guess I should wrap NSR into this too, is that it encompasses so much. Mothership is no doubt OSR/NSR game. But look how much we had to reframe our way of thinking after playing like a huge long OSR campaign. Like, I just like the fact that it just encompasses so much gameplay styles.
And it's not something that I had, 30 years ago when I was a kid playing D&D. It's not something I thought about. Like, there's a way to play role-playing games. You pretend to be so-and-so and you roll dice. And it's completely different than that.
For sure. Matt, go ahead, sorry.
So there was one thing that we started with this campaign that I think is going to be a good addition to our table going forward. And that's when at some point we said, you know what? Always say what you're trying to do. Like, don't get before you go into all the details. I want to remove this panel and cross these wires and spray it with foam and do this and do that. Before you get into all that detail, say what you're trying to accomplish. Right? I want to, disable the door so that the androids can't come in. And here's what I'm going to do. Blah, 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 blah. Because then not only does it help kind of keep things going faster, because the GM can just say, oh yeah, I get it. Okay. Yeah, that'll work, or that won't work, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it also gives them kind of time to think, right? And time to respond, instead of having them listen and trying to figure out what the hell you're trying to accomplish. If you say, my goal is to do this, and here's how I go about it, they have the whole time while you're explaining what you're doing to figure out, oh, does that make sense? Is that really going to work? So I think that was a really valuable thing that we added into the campaign. And I think
I'll give myself props for that one. That is not something that is written in the books. That was something that when I saw the issue and we needed to do that adjustment, I was like, here's a way that we can fix at least that aspect of it.
I vote that John runs the next campaign also.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all in favor.
Well, except for some amuse-bouches that we have coming.
Can I just actually, before David jumps in, can I riff on that, Matt? Which is, I think that one of the reasons we don't do that when we fail and we start by saying, okay, I want to spray foam in the thing, whatever, is because we are trying to not just work out in our head what we're doing, but also we're trying to convince John before he even knows what we're doing of why it should succeed and why we should get it.
100%.
Yes.
That is the
gaming.
Real game. That's
we're
real
gaming,
game.
As opposed to saying, I want to accomplish X. And John says, how do you want to accomplish X? And that's a different thing. But we lead with the, maybe John will give me advantage on this roll or a +1 or whatever. And like, we've even sometimes openly voiced it, like John, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm hoping you'll give me an advantage because I'm going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
In that last session of Mothership, we were doing it. So I think that that's a really good one, Matt.
David,
I think a lot of hay is made between like story games versus OSR and all that shit, and I think to be the contrarian that I am, I think it's exactly that, mostly hay. But there's something to be said about sort of the positive and negative space of games, sort of the rules allied thing. Do you really attach to the levers that are there, or do you try to invent where they aren't? And I say all of that because I think an interesting observation I had from Mothership is that while I think we're all like, I think OSR is a very story focused play style, even though people might suggest otherwise because of its mechanics, right? But I think while we all like really are invested in our characters and embodiment, Mothership's levers are so on a conceptual level that I think it evoked more character play, so to speak, more frequently in the absence of harder, crunchier levers, than perhaps in other campaigns where there's a different rhythm there. And in that sense, like, again, I don't believe in this paradigm, but I would put Mothership closer to the story game side of things in a lot of ways, even though it has,
I agree. Yeah.
Even though it has all these crunch mechanics, but I would specifically say, especially in Gradient Descent, because of the rhythm we're talking about and the spatiality, it goes further in that direction, right? So I was playing to David, or I was thinking about David far more than I was thinking about the space, right?
Right.
That's not a bad thing. It's just a different play style that emerges from that.
I think that's good though, because it's
no, I think it's a good thing, but
yeah.
to go to the rules allied or whatever, like the last thing I'll say, the like positive negative space, aka what's present in the rule set versus what isn't. I think I've harped on it before. Within fantasy as a genre, playing with the negative space, playing into the absence, is easier because it's more intuitive to us, right? That like foaming the door thing becomes a harder conversation than does fire, burn tree or whatever. And in that regard, like playing a sci-fi game with a lot of negative space makes it very hard to do exactly what we've been talking about, like figure out that crunchiness. And so we'll tend to bias away from it if it doesn't reward us. And that means more and more character play, right? More and more interfacing through the sort of psychology of that,
for sure,
that space.
Yeah, I agree, Mike.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of said, I think I went first, actually. Didn't I?
Did.
Go first?
Yeah, you already went.
Sorry.
I'm like about to say something. I'm like,
Move on.
Sorry. My thing, real quick with that was that Matt's thing about telling what your goals are. I think it's something that you could that is a play style thing that you could lift, and it's not from Mothership. It's just something that we did for this campaign. But I think that was so successful that I think that you could literally lift that and put it into any other RPG, and it would be an effective tool. The other thing that
Matt and I have a kids game that we run together, and we use it for that because the kids will be like, "Can I do a thing?" And it's like, "What is it you want to accomplish?
Yeah, what is the end goal?
Tell me what you're doing
and how you do it."
I think it's a very useful tool. So anyone out there who maybe not be too experienced in RPGs, take that one to the bank. It'll make your big games better.
Also, having a caller.
Having a caller, very key.
And getting rid of the high score thing is an important mechanic. You got to get rid of that.
I don't think that it's a mechanic that necessarily would translate to other RPGs, but something that I really liked in Mothership was the initiative system or lack of initiative system. I thought that was really cool. I like that it favors like the PCs get to go first, but only after the GM says like, this is what will happen if you don't do anything. Right.
I also love that the game explicitly says never get into melee or you'll die. And Mike was like, I'll take that challenge.
I don't want to get into a big diatribe about it, but I kind of feel, even though I loved our Marine characters, I kind of feel like the game shouldn't allow Marines. You know what I mean?
I agree heavily.
Hard disagree.
I think
they should all Marines. They should all be Marines.
I would love to play that too, like Wages of
this
Sin,
is the alien versus aliens thing you were talking
exactly.
about.
Like, are we playing?
I'm an alien guy in this simulation.
No, you can do that. Like we could just do that. I could just say like you're not the same way I do in Doma with not allowing certain races. Like you could just say like this game is an alien game, not an aliens game. So therefore, Marines not an option. But they only give you 4 options,
right?
And it was the first time we were playing Mothership like for real, right? Like seriously. So
this does become a problem with the D100 system, which I like, but combat probabilities are so like failing probabilities on other stats have major consequences, but combat is so lethal in this game that the probability of success in combat being so tough and Marines being the people who are good at combat means you not having one is just like, I mean, again, it's a choice you make, but you're really going to run from every fight.
Right.
I feel like.
This actually ties into the next question.
Next question. Yeah. Demi 1997 says, how did you guys like the actual game engine D100 stuff? It seems so elegant and clear for new players, but I'm hesitant to pick it up if it's too rules light. And I think David makes a great point there about that, which is, but on the whole, I would say I liked the mechanics, all of them. I thought somebody earlier in the comments commented that maybe a bell curve with like say 3d6 would make certain things probably more accurate or believable. But on the whole, the consistency of the D100 system made sense. It made it easy to do. I wouldn't say it's rules light. I'd say it was just right rules wise. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I think if I were going to hack job this, and I don't know how I would do it and make it actually work, keep the D100 system, the probabilities as such, I'd probably video game references, but I'd probably go like a Escape from Tarkov route and have like a single successful hit be almost certain death on most encounters, so that the probability of hitting is very low, but getting hit, you're fucked.
Well,
right, and it's close to that,
It
but
is close to that.
but with like the androids, for instance, you know, I unload a smart rifle into an android's chest and he's standing still. I get that it's a robot, right? But it goes to Mike's thing about, are we fighting a xenomorph? Are we fighting a like swarm sort of entity? And I think there's some balancing there to be had, you know. But go ahead, John. You were going to say something.
Just that most of the lower powered enemies are exactly that, where they have one wound,
yeah.
and so any hit offs them. And
we just never met one.
Exactly right. But that's exactly right. Like there's but a lot of the NPCs did like what was her name? Helen. The point being, like what you were already talking about, bitching about the security androids and how tough they were. It's like, I agree. Like they should have had, instead of like 2 or 3 wounds with a number of health points like characters, it's like they should have just had one wound, and so like if any hit destroys them, sort of thing, you know.
Well, and the beauty of the other sort of assumptions around the androids, especially in like the security areas where they're not immediately hostile, if we're extrapolating on Matt's or Mike's sort of point here, is I don't know what a movie, right? Not zombies per se, but if what the androids are individually weak, but they're a swarm, but they're inattentive to you unless you grab their attention. The tension then isn't in fighting them. It's like passing rooms without getting their attention. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something really interesting to be mined there in Gradient Descent, where it really is about like keeping your head down, not making eye contact, making as little noise as possible. And that goes to what Matt was saying earlier about that sustained tension.
Sure,
because that is the platonic ideal of this. I agree. I don't want aliens combat. I'm on John's side there, but that tension, really pushing it even further, really pushing it, would feel great, you know. And putting 10 and with that assumption, putting 10 times more androids in every floor, right? Then you have like a real, I mean, that's proportionate to what you want to do with your game, but then you have a real way of juicing that sort of tension system. Anyway, yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts about the system?
No notes, man. I love percentile systems, so I'm not gonna wax poetic on it. I thought it was really good. I do think that the one thing that I would say just about character stuff is you needed certain skills, I think, in this adventure that none of our players ever had. Hacking kind of comes to mind on that. So John, you were really good about telegraphing what skills were going to be very useful to us. But to reach those higher level skills, you need to have an advancement system that is like real, right? Like, I mean, character advancement in this game is, again, it's like almost like, don't worry about it, you're never going to do it. So
it's a game of degradation, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I find me personally, Mike finds that demotivating as far as like a role-playing game.
I have a thought on that, actually, because I really like the skill splat and the skill tree in Mothership. I really like it. And everyone knows that I'm Mr. Level 1, no progression.
Sure.
But so much of the game, I think, is predicated on skill gates. At least in Gradient Descent, it felt a little bit. I mean, it wasn't like a problem. We didn't have any really hard, walls. But so many of those skills are so expressive just in their name, right? That being able to access them or learn them in some way, whether that's through leveling up or something else, would be nice, because it would give a larger, we talk about Arden Vul OSR as like a spatial matrix where we problem solving little things by just trying new stuff, dig a hole, etc. That is expressed through the characterization and the skills in Mothership, right? Because you're dealing with steel instead of dirt, right?
Yeah.
And being able to engage with those more would be really nice.
They do have those rules, but like Mike was saying earlier, like it takes ever.
Yeah,
it's realistic. It's realistic, but it's certainly not fun.
I'd probably homebrew some like textbooks that you could learn from or something like that if you did change the sort of like progression.
Or like the Matrix thing where they just download.
Downloading skills
into the Cyberpunk thing and just put a skill check.
Exactly. That was how we when we played our Cyberpunk campaign. That was our solution. Was you could just chip it in.
They have that in Prospero's Dream. There's like a neighborhood. There's a shop you can visit where you can do what do you call them?
I love that.
All right,
slim slate.
Guys, let's do some more questions. Come on.
Yes. All right. I think Matt's next for Joe. For Archibral.
Archibral. Okay, I can do that. Archibral asks, after going through it, do you think the system of Mothership lends itself well to a mega dungeon? What was character progression as satisfying as an Ardenvool?
We're not reading forward, right? We keep
No.
hitting the
Yeah,
topic.
weird.
Well, I mean, these are all
It's very funny.
related, and they're
Yeah,
great
yeah.
We're all
questions.
thinking. We're all thinking.
I mean, I can start with this one. Is like, one of the key things that I personally did in starting this was acknowledging that this is a game of deterioration. This character is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until they die. And that's exactly what happened. And when you're in that mindset from the beginning, and you're not hoping or dreaming of OSR style of progression and getting better by accumulating these more things, the very fact that your character is gaining these stresses and gaining these wounds slowly over time, and you don't always have time to like catch up, or if you are able to make one step forward, it's in the face of 5 steps back that you had just fallen, right? So I thought for me at least, if you're able to embrace that from the start and know that that's the movie that you're in, then it's fine. Then it's good.
Mhm.
And then it becomes a game of how long can I milk this? How long can I keep this fragile thing alive and floating before it just
So does that work with
disintegrates.
a mega dungeon though?
I was curious about that from the start, and I think that it is somewhat in tension with that. And I think that kind of what John was saying is, if this is placed in a larger world where you can dip in and dip out and dip in and dip out for larger things with a larger group for a longer term campaign than what we were trying to do, absolutely, I think it can work that way, but not, I don't think for the specific kind of targeted, we're going to stay here for the whole time thing. Yeah, it gets a little bit, but I think that what it does is it puts just a scale on the whole campaign right from the beginning. Like, if that's what you're going to do, then you're going to have a campaign with an end that is not in the scale of Ardenvool, which can go for years and years and years.
Mhm.
If you're going to stay in the deep the whole time, the campaign is going to have a bookend that's around what we've had.
Can
I go next, or no, you go, John?
To answer this question?
I thought that's what you said.
So far it's just me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, well, we have a lot more questions.
We have a lot of questions to get to. I think we should.
I'm thinking in order to like try to get as many conquerors as we can, because they were so kind enough to participate, that we should maybe not like all 5 of us hit every single note.
I think that's smart. But can I break that rule and just say one thing in response?
Yeah, sorry.
30 seconds, David.
30 seconds. You ready? You ready? I think
I don't want Mike to explode. So
no, I know. I think Matt's very right. I think mini games are about a power fantasy, and I think the core premise of Mothership is about a death fantasy. Like, the ideal win is dying on your own terms, not one that most of us will achieve, right? And I think that the friction that comes up with a mega dungeon is no one likes a slow death, right? And there's a productive amount of anxiety and a protracted experience of that, and there's a not productive anxiety that comes with it, depending on the in between, right? And so it does become hard, I think, when it's really long, to not start feeling like you're stalling out, because you can neither realize the death in an actionable sense, and you're feeling the pain of like treatment, for lack of a better word, right? Well, I'm in hospice. I mean, that's kind of a bleak comparison, but you know what I mean? Like, it feels a little bit like that. But I think a death fantasy is a really good premise for a game. So I think it still works, because I like that more than, power fantasies most of the time anyway. I'll talk to my therapist, but that's it. 30 seconds.
Yeah, for sure.
Next question.
David, it's you get to ask another question of me.
Okay. John, I will say, Jofo, great question. John did cover this pretty extensively. Maybe just summarize it, John. But for John, you said several times during the campaign that you don't have as much experience in the sci-fi genre as fantasy. Do you think this affected your enjoyment or your ability to run such a tersely described module?
Yeah, I think I've covered almost every aspect of this. Just in case for people not showing up, I actually do have a pretty extensive knowledge of sci-fi, if I do say so myself. Just not a big Star Trek fan. I have good knowledge. I can run sci-fi games just fine. So it didn't really have that didn't really have an effect on my way of running the game. I'm not as into nitty gritty technical details as someone like Ted is. That doesn't it doesn't thrill me. It doesn't brings me, But so I that's why I kind of want to run space opera, because you don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. But yeah. But thank you for the question, Jofo. Sorry, we already discussed the answer to that. Mike.
All right. This is from Zach Rolls Ones. The guys found the pattern. This is going to be for John. The guys found the pattern for Lucky Takahashi, the pilot, in the system in the Android factory. Was Lucky an infiltrator, and would he have messed with the players if they had decided to leave the deep with or without the star drive?
Good, solid point, right to the point question. So the answer to the first one is, I believe I telegraphed it. I think I did not even telegraph. I think I was explicit that Lucky was an infiltrator.
Yeah,
maybe I wasn't, and I just kind of always thought that everyone knew that. But yes, Lucky was an infiltrator. But he was one of those Manchurian Candidate ones where he didn't really know that he was an infiltrator, right? So he would not have messed with the players unless they had tried to escape after dooming Monarch. Like, again, like Monarch doesn't give a shit if you left, it doesn't really matter. But if you had rearmed the nuclear warhead and tried to like bolt off, then he would have triggered the Manchurian Candidate, and he would have probably driven the Dashwood into Baphomet 3. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
Perfect.
Well, I'm glad we didn't try that option.
I tried to warn Arcady, but he didn't want to believe me. He smoked
one
too
way or
much
the other.
weed.
You were all dead. I'm sorry.
All right, who's up next?
Me, Mando NZ. What do you find was the biggest hindrance to this campaign as a whole? A particular set of rules, the module layout or content, etc.
Mike,
I think we definitely
David.
covered this.
Yeah. I'm the biggest detriment. Oh, Mr. Hey, everybody, make a stress check. If you failed to flush the toilet, make a stress check.
I think we all pretty much, we've been talking about our issues with it constantly, right? So
hard science.
I think it's pretty clear. Ted, you're up next.
All right. Let's see. This question is from Hex Brawler Jake. Thank you, Mr. Brawler. How did the players find adapting to a game that you can't win and doesn't really reward your PC for getting out of bed, much less most of the default strategies used in OSR dungeoneering? And my interpretation of that would be, I don't think we needed to adapt much to the exploration concept.
Right.
I think we found all the exact same joys in kicking open the doors as we did in Ardenvool. And yeah, there were moments it was like, why do you play a game where you can't get better and you're not going to get the treasure to get out and, go off and, become the Pope of the goblins? Because you get to kick down the doors and explore. And as David mentioned not long ago, a glorious death is a pretty great thing. I'm very happy with the way Dixon went down. I thought that was cinematically pretty kick-ass. So
I love
glorious
death.
that was its own reward.
Because I'm not the one dying, but I love to see you guys have glorious death.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add that my most successful sessions were the ones I missed.
There's a lesson to be learned.
and that says everything Mike needed to say right
2
there.
hours of blank screen, John just twiddling his thumbs on camera. Whoa, you guys are doing great. Look, none of them died today.
That's all. Look at my high score. I'm like, look at my stress score.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll say I had fun, and although Matt got the high score, I think my stated goal of how I would die was realized in the final episode, and that
Oh,
felt
for
For
sure.
all of us.
incredibly successful to me.
Yeah.
And
Very
satisfying.
I
to watch.
took hold of it in the way that I wanted to, and I knew exactly what John was going to do for it.
It was great though. I loved it. I love that we were simpatico without actually talking
Yes,
to each other.
of
about
course.
it.
Yeah,
It was
there was
amazing.
no doubt.
I
There was
know
no
you
doubt
too
what was
well,
gonna
John.
happen.
We were very in
No
the
doubt.
zone, which is like a rare thing in these games. Like we're just like,
I always enjoy
Yeah.
flirting with John via game.
All right, I think Matt's up.
Okay, next one is from Grizz Loves Games. I know we've only been privy to a few of the campaigns that you've played together, but how would the group rate Gradient Descent amongst the other campaigns that you've played as a group?
the favorite child question.
They're all better than Pathfinder 2e.
We can say that clearly. Yeah.
I want
That was
to
a great
pass it to
campaign,
these
though.
guys who've played a lot more campaign. I mean, you guys have seen all but one of the campaigns that I've played with these guys, so I want to leave it to the other guys to answer this one.
The Pathfinder 2 campaign was, yes, it was Pathfinder 2. I understand it was a math hammer, but it was still a fun campaign. So I wouldn't count that one out, David. That was good. That was
I kind of
No,
think
I
my
always have
my
fun
impression
with
though
you
is that
guys.
Grizz is actually referring to like games that are available, like our 3D6 games. Like
Oh,
the ones that are
yeah.
available. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
okay.
apples and oranges,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's apples and oranges. I had just as much fun dying in front of the hunter as I did wearing the helm of Toristus, or only having a 5 con and shivering to death in the forest. It was
That's
all
exactly
good.
my answer too.
Yeah.
Apples and oranges. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tend to seek out death in every game I play and find it in whatever way I think is most appropriate for the character type. I will say,
sure.
though it is outside of what we recorded, the first game I ever played with these guys was Mage. And I don't know why, but Mothership has felt the closest to playing Mage to me.
Because there's angst, man. That's because
it's the angst and it's the characterization thing. And there's, I don't know, it just that felt, I kind of want to play Mage again. To be
I
honest.
love
But yeah,
Mage. Oh,
I love Mage.
I
It was
look at my
so
full
fun.
collection right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anytime, any day.
Hell yeah.
I used to walk through the rainy streets of God, where was Josh's apartment?
The Village, man.
Yeah, down the village.
West Village, and then go play Mothership in a absolutely decrepit apartment, or Mothership, sorry, Mage in a decrepit apartment, and it all just the verisimilitude was perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Who's up next? David.
That's my turn. Balto Bruiser asks, how would you transfer the tension from Mothership to OSR? I don't have a good answer because I feel like it's kind of been conveyed, but I think it is in for me, regardless of the rules, finding areas in the negative space of a game to really always focus on riding the wave more than succeeding, even if success is a part of the wave.
I have a real discreet answer for you because it's a mechanic thing. I think that you could, with a little bit of massaging, you could take the stress, panic, doom cycle, a collection of mechanics, and just lift it and drop it into another game with a little bit of massaging for the individual system. But I loved that.
Yeah.
And I think it would work really great in what classic D&D is, which is basically survival horror.
Yes.
And I think it would work really, really well.
Well, it interfaces with the morale concept, right? Like I was saying earlier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is who's reading next? Is it
You.
I think it's you.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So Simone C says, what was your favorite aspect of Mothership in general and of Gradient Descent in particular? I'll take that one. It was like, I think my favorite part of Mothership in general is just, I love the overall scenario, the overall scheme and stuff like that. Gradient Descent for me was, I thought that the spaces were really unusual. The one that kind of hit me in the face with that was the giant weeping dildo room. That's when you knew you were not in Kansas anymore. We go into that room and we're just like, we open the door, we literally see this horrible thing, and we're just like,
nope.
And we shut the door and we laughed. We were like,
that's Dear Luke Gearing right there. That's him.
Yeah, that was nasty. And
good stuff.
I think that was actually phenomenal for this campaign.
They do have that in Kansas, by the way, Mike. That's very
well known.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that next
don't
to
go
the
to
Corn
Kansas.
Palace?
I'll just say live fast, die young.
Yeah.
Okay, Mighty Martian. If you could fix one mechanic in Mothership, what would it be? We kind of talked about this. Sorry, Mighty Martian. Like I don't really have many issues with mechanics. I thought they were all pretty tight. I think it's a very
Pulse rifles.
I had one. It made a lot of sense that something as fragile as a vac suit would be trashed the instant that it was punctured, but the mechanic that armor gets completely destroyed when you take damage, whatever, that didn't feel right. It seems like it should gradually reduce, not be, and so that's all gone now. You got shot, so that armor's all gone. And not
John
good.
did let me fix my armor at one point though, that, and that was cool. But you're absolutely right. It's like you get basically shot one time, your armor is complete garbage at that point. So
Well, I think that ties into what I was saying, where I think if we'd established early on that you have to leave your vac suits in the airlock, right? Then the one-shot puncture would make sense, because getting into combat in the vacuum of space would be a terrible idea.
Yeah,
but then you would never be in combat in the dungeon in a vac suit, right?
I think that's the key. I think bringing vac suits along into the deep was never the intention. I didn't know because we had never played it. So
Mhm.
we ended up like adapting those vac suit rules later on in the campaign. But yeah, you're right. If we had established them from day one,
Yeah.
I think they would have worked as intended.
And that's an easy fix. You just have to, as even as a house rule, just say vac suits, are wildly bulky, and if you are under gravity, you are basically useless. You cannot do anything.
Right.
And anyone who's worn a proper vac suit would probably be like, "Yeah, you guys are idiots."
Yeah, exactly.
And I would probably also take I always call them the wrong thing. The space stormtroopers.
The exosuit.
Yes, but the troubleshooters, I would probably take the troubleshooter suit and just remove it from their special category and make it an exoskeleton. And having an exoskeleton in the game that is not a vac ready item, but is an amplifier of your strength or your dexterity or mag boots or whatever, is a much more interesting modular way to interact with the dungeon with a Benny. That's what I would say too.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the idea of like a take a penny, leave a penny aspect of vac suits that would happen if that was the rule in general in the ship, because there are a bunch of divers, right? And everybody would have to do that. So at every airlock, there would be, a bunch of vac suits.
Yeah, but they're the ones that just empty the penny jar and then don't put any pennies back because they're constantly just running through those things.
I've worked in a factory, and you take care of your own tools, and you never depend on anyone else's leaving something in a working order for you ever.
Right.
And anyway,
all right, Ted, you're up.
Oh, you're not going to read one?
I just did. Mighty Martians.
Oh, did you? Oh, so am I? Here come the Davids. That's what a rare treat. This is an easy one. Okay. You had the money to pay off your debt, but decided to go back into the deep. What was your character's motivation to do so? More money. That's very easy.
Yeah. Filthy
more. No, really. It was like, okay, if we go give this thing to Thelema and it covers our debt, I have no change. I wanted one more hit. Even if it was only $1 million hit. We can go back and split that 4 ways, and we can like party on Prospero's Dream for quite a while. So
the gambler's quandary.
Yeah,
just because we as players understand the capitalist critique doesn't mean our characters do.
I just need a little cushion, and I'm good.
I just needed a little extra. Yeah,
and
money.
I alluded to this earlier. That wasn't why Thulsa went back. She wanted to know what Monarch's deal was. She didn't want to pay off that debt to Thelema if that was the worst of the two options.
And this is also where David and Thulsa really joined in incentives. David, from the minute he was aware that there was a godlike intelligence of a fashion like himself, he was always going to try to merge with it. There was never, the money was not even a consideration the minute I found out about Monarch.
Who's up next?
Matt.
Okay. So Fedge, I'll say that, asks, what did you think about the bends for the players? I'm interested in whether it affected their decision-making as players. For John, I'm interested in his thoughts on the mechanics. I can say, as the person who suffered the bends the most, it was a really interesting challenge to have your player agency, taken by this insanity. And it was made very clear, and this is again to John's credit, made very clear from the start of this module that player agency would be taken away at some point. Like, there are things that can take your player agency away in this game. So it wasn't a surprise. It was clearly going. And there was, I'm sure people who saw kind of the last episodes were noting, like, John and I were trying to kind of feel out, like, what is really going to scratch the itch of these psychoses that that Thulsa was doing. And I would try some things as a player, and John was like, that's not quite doing it. That's not quite enough.
To your credit, as you all did this to some extent, but to your credit, Matt, you were stellar in your leaning into that loss of agency and playing it up. I don't think a lot of players would be so amenable to playing those detrimental effects.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'll say, well, okay.
It's just treasure. Come on.
Two quick things. I used. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just gonna say, did we ever figure out how much that painting that she trashed was?
It was like 10 million or something like that.
It was worth nothing. It was worth nothing. It was an AI painting.
It's in the book. It was an artifact. Yeah.
I will say this because somebody had asked in the thing. Because there was a key point. There was a key decision-making point where the scales were either going to tip towards this very rapid ending and decline, or several more episodes at least where we tried to figure stuff out. And that was when we were dealing with his name was Silas, right?
Mhm.
The last AI guy.
Yep.
And there was a decision-making point at the end of one episode, at the beginning of another one, where he had asked us if we could kind of clean up the mess of these dead androids. And he would express that he would have accepted us like putting one in a bin, right?
Right.
We knew that was one possible outcome. So the choice was really ours. We can either go and take these bodies to the maw, like he was requesting, or we could leave them here and continue, laser focus on trying to get the mind thief.
Mhm.
And he said that it was going to be acceptable either way. And so the choice was really ours. That single choice to go one way and not the other was what put us in that dangerous place. Like, even if Thulsa had failed that Ben's check along that different path, we wouldn't have been in a place where it triggered the spiral that led to us having no other direction to go but down the hole.
Yes.
Where we did. So for me, that was a key point, and it was all brought to a head after that decision by that failed Ben's check.
Yeah. I want to add one thing before we move on. Watching Matt and John was a pleasure. I think I said it in the Discord, but my belief is that the real game, or the best, like the ideal experience of a TTRPG, is two people jumping off a cliff and trying to architect a parachute on the way down. Which is to say that it is the closest you're going to get to a non-deterministic result that requires you two to be connected in the conversation and believe in each other and believe without judgment the outcomes that'll come out of it. And I think Matt and John were really, really good at that. Yeah. And in terms of the stress thing, just to highlight that, it's also why I think it'd be great to graft into OSR, because I think I love agency play because it does this, right? And that's why I think like morale, if we're not using a fear mechanic, should also affect players, not just NPCs in traditional games. There should be a friction there of loss of agency. Anyway, that's it.
Just keep going. Who's up next?
Who read that one?
Right?
I think maybe.
So why don't we do this just so I don't want to miss anybody. So why don't we just we'll keep rolling around with the questions, but the person who asked the question, who reads out the question, should just give the answer.
Okay.
Unless it's specifically directed to a specific person.
Right. Just so we can get
and if you have a strong feeling, jump in. That's
but we'll expedite a bit. Okay, Dungeon Heart Adam asks, if you were to try out another horror style game, what would be the most valuable lesson you learned from this one to help you in the next? Oh, give me a hard question. Shit, I don't know, man. Anyone else?
Well, I'll take it if you want. My answer to that was to keep the pressure on at all times.
Yes.
And then make them earn every single minute of respite that they can get.
Yes, I agree.
I'll just say, as a player, I think the main thing is to really just lean into like a movie trope a little bit and just go do the dumb thing that a person would do, that everyone in the theater is like, no, don't do that. I'll go look in the dark room.
Yeah, let's split up.
Yeah, and then move on.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to know whether you're playing Alien or Aliens,
right,
before you start.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay,
Mike?
Is it me? I think this is Eero. E-R-O-U-E. Now that you've played a massive campaign, Ardenvool, and a shorter campaign, what are your preferred campaign lengths to run? I'll take this one. I think that Mothership is kind of the sweet spot as far as like campaign length goes. Also partly because we are doing this online and stuff like that. Ardenvool is fantastic. But really, to get as much out of a campaign that length, like the level of commitment that we had to make into note keeping and record keeping and tracking all the things almost made it to be like a part-time job.
Yeah, the behind the scenes.
To be clear, that was not Mike.
No, it's not me. But I will say that not ever taking notes, my retention of the facts were actually very high.
Yeah, they were. Yes. Yeah.
But I think like a shorter campaign, maybe Mothership ended a little bit too early. I would have liked to see another 10, 15 episodes.
A strong mark. Yeah.
Which is good. Yeah. I thought there was good solid arc though. I
agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Agree.
We got the Monarch, so that's kind of cool.
It was an emergent story, and the narrative itself flowed well. There was a rise and
And the fact that we ended in abject failure was absolutely phenomenal.
very dramatic, yeah.
Yeah.
And it made sense, yeah. So no issues.
Okay.
Where are we? Hot dog. For all of you.
Can I read this one, John, and then you do the next one?
Sure.
Because the next one's really yours.
Okay.
Hot dog. For all of you, what was your personal highlight of the campaign? I think I've already said I really liked how Dylan went down, but there were some moments where I really enjoyed being a Marine. But I think probably the personal highlight was just like the way the characters developed. You start with these 4 archetypes, and there's not a lot to differentiate a trucker from that Mike rolls from a trucker that I roll, right? So that character is totally created by us, and watching that emerge, even if what it turns into is David, is a lot of fun to watch happen. I think Maya had probably had a pretty clear idea of what Tulsa was from the beginning, but even that develops. So
yeah, but
Mine
what
was
was
the Steve
the
sequence.
scene that was the highlight for you, Ted?
the scene,
Yeah, that's
Dixon's death was
Okay.
awesome.
That's cool.
Steve sequence for me. I love this Steve. That whole thing was
That
fucking
was-
rad.
fantastic.
That was
Love
pretty
that
sweet.
Yeah.
Mine, I guess it wasn't a single moment for me, but like one of my goals from the beginning with Thulsa was never to use a weapon. And how far can you go with this and playing true to the character and not, and I almost did once, but I didn't. And so that was, I thought that was really cool. That was a personal
Love
goal,
that,
and
love
I
that.
made it.
Cool.
Mike, or I'll
David?
go.
sorry.
I mean, it's on pure adrenaline, like dopamine, whatever. The fact that I succeeded at all at that was
crazy.
It was just
incredibly
crazy
thrilling.
rolls.
Yeah.
On like story, I think both sacrificing and trying to save Dixon was probably the highlight on a story basis. Yeah.
And
Good
I'll
stuff.
say for me, it was the scene where we were in the hangar in 0G, and I like outsniped the security androids to save.
Very Mike answer. Very
Yeah,
Mike
so
answer.
Mike answer.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, I
0G
fireballed the
sniping
guy. I
the-
fireballed the guy.
That was awesome. That was my favorite part. right.
Okay, so you want me to read this Soul Slurs? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Now that I look at the question, yeah. Was there ever a chance of finding the corpses and loot of the Art Vul gang? No, there was not. That was purely just an Easter egg to open up the campaign. Like I had not worked out any reason for why that would, you know what I mean? It was just a fun thing to oh, remember this campaign? That's it.
Is Squeegee or anybody, were they infiltrators?
As I said, I had not thought that far ahead.
Hey, John, who do you think, if any of them, would have survived that dungeon?
I'll just ask this one because it's directed towards me. Rob Jones. Oh, and we unfortunately, Rob Jones, we answered it. He asked again about my supposed lack of familiarity with sci-fi. I am not unfamiliar with sci-fi. Just go back in the stream and see my explanation for that. Who should Scotty F? Anyone want to take Scotty F's?
I'll do it. I think it's my turn. Scotty F. In Ardenvool and Dolmenwood, you have the dungeon turns procedure that structures time, movement, actions, and resource use. And Mothership seems more like a scene-based structure. From a GM perspective, John, did you find the lack of the turn-based procedure made the game harder to run or pace, or did it feel more natural for the system? I would love to hear the player perspective as well.
So I had no issue with it. I ended up using turns only because turns in old D&D are generally about to be 10 minutes long. And that's exactly the increments of time that they outlined in Gradient Descent about how long it takes to traverse a personal space room, 30 minutes for industrial space. So it married perfectly. So it just was very easy for me to adopt tracking turns. But I did it mostly not for the procedural aspect, but just to keep time. I just needed to know like what time it was so that that's all it was. No big deal.
I liked it. I thought, I might have been a little more persnickety if we had like spells that last for 6 turns. I'd be like, what do you mean that it ran out? But
Right.
having it scene based for what we were doing really worked well.
The one thought that I had was the place where I think it could have come into play more, but we didn't really engage in it too much, was with the oxygen supply levels inside
Yeah.
vac suits.
Sure.
Like there were like some of the traversing outside of the station It didn't really at the end come up play, and it was a lot. It would have been a lot to keep track of because these were found vac suits and damaged and repaired, and which one is it? And oh, I dragged that from here. I think it would have been a nightmare, but it was one of the places that I think it could have been implemented more. And
For sure.
I'll just say that when I'm running a game, I barely track time anyway. I do it more by vibe. So I didn't feel impacted by this at all. Like I was like, no, works, makes sense.
Yeah, for
Cool.
me, I didn't mind the time. Same picadillo I've had before. Spatiality and industrial sized rooms were probably the one thing I was disappointed the most with, because appeal de vide, right? Like, for instance, when we knew that one room had a duct somewhere in it, right? But the scale of the room and the time to navigate it was too profound for it to be worth doing. It's a bad feeling friction point. It's like, oh, I see this giant void. I know something could be in it. There's a high probability there isn't. But having the self-control to say, oh, I'm just going to ignore it, kind of, I don't love, right? And that's not anyone's fault, right? It's just I think industrial scale rooms just didn't work very well, and time doesn't marry with that, frankly.
Yep. David, you want to read Squans?
Yeah, Squan asks, I'm sure most of us have seen the interview with Sean McCoy where he talks about the lack of stealth mechanics in the system, specifically made to force interrogation of the fiction when one wants to engage in stealth. Do you think it actually works well in play, or do you feel like it's a good idea for the system, that the system would benefit from having an actual mechanic for engaging in stealth beyond conversation? I'll start and just say I am a big, rules allied. I don't think you need a system for stealth. I think the conversation's almost always more interesting than a mechanic on any given feature, but I do think every game needs enough mechanics for it to feel legitimate. So it's where you want to put them.
I agree. And we didn't really use stealth mechanics that often in AV, for that matter, because there really isn't one. I mean, the thieves have like the hide in shadows and move silently, but those are, the way that we played them were literally hiding in a physical shadow, and moving completely silently,
Right.
So we just interrogated the fiction with stealth in D&D, and there's nothing saying you can't do that in other D&D adjacent games as well. So no issues with that. I thought it was fine.
Cool.
Mike, I'm sorry.
This is from Papa Bear DM. Papa Bear, what was it like dealing with a borderline omniscient evil AI? For John, do you think the module has, as written, helped you to portray it in a way that you considered satisfactory for the players? What was that like for you? I'll take the player point for me. Like, every interaction with Monarch was confusing, deliberately so, I'm sure, and also left you feeling. I'm not going to say dissatisfied, because it's not an actual dissatisfaction, but it left me, the player, the character, being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I was always more confused after any kind of interaction with Monarch than before, like, we had it, right? It just seemed like this arbitrary thing that was like, you guys are messing up my station. I'm now going to put a bounty on you. Fuck off. And so I thought, as far as an evil AI goes, I was really more expecting like something more along the lines of like My Friend the Computer from Paranoia, which is always kind of like my favorite evil AI. But John, you could take the rest.
The module gives you really good advice about how to play an omniscient intelligence when you yourself are not omniscient. It basically says that get the plans from your players, and then Monarch is always 8 steps ahead of that plan. Which I think is really good advice. I think that's the way I kind of played it. And then so I played that to the hill. And then I think people up in the comments of this stream have actually mentioned this near the top, actually, that the way the key who I keyed off of to play Monarch was Kraz from Ardenvool. That's how I sort of approached him, is that he doesn't care about what you guys do.
Yes.
You're nothing to him, right? He doesn't seek to squash you. You just happened to get squashed because you were in his way. So that's how I approached Monarch, and I think it was pretty effective, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, and I think to put a T on that, pleasure isn't the ultimate goal of like fulfilling a player's pleasures and the ultimate goal of a game, even though often there needs to be sufficient quantities of that. So I think the omniscience
Heresy.
I know. Well, but so the omniscience as a simulation of that experience, I think, is incredibly effective. At the same time, it's frustrating as shit to deal with omniscience when you want to be able to like look for security cameras, when you want to be able to engage with like blinding tactics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's productive, right? Like, I don't know. It's like a back and forth. Like, did I like that as someone who wanted to be able to affect it? No. Did I like it as someone who understood the overall like tonal map I was making? Absolutely.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. I'll ask this one to David. This is from Christo. For David specifically, how did playing a character with your own name change your experience of the game? Good question.
I got I was a little anxious because David is the character in Prometheus, and I wasn't trying to make that conflation, but I really liked with the themes of gradient descent. This is me being a nerd. I'm a fucking insufferable art nerd, but the idea of engaging very literally with the blurring of myself and the character, and what that would do both for a viewer, perhaps, not that I'm the best role player, but also for me, how it would affect my articulation just implicitly, and how that would affect the character even when I wasn't intending to. And so I feel very proud of making that decision, even though it seems silly, on the face. That's all I have to say.
Good answer. Yeah.
All right.
Take the last one. This is actually a really good question to end it. This is our last question.
And it's perfect for me. Jimbo WA asks, it seems like in a horror RPG, there is more of a need for players and DMs to not break the tension with a silly joke. Did you guys have any thoughts on how to keep everyone bought in? I am famous for ruining the moment with silly jokes. I cannot help myself. And I apologize for it. And it has caused tension before. So I don't know. I mean, I think, what we do is an inherently sort of silly thing. It's not, we're not trying to do drama on stage. If I was doing Macbeth and kept breaking in with jokes, it would not be Macbeth, but that being said, that I have definitely ruined a few serious scenes here and there because I can't help myself. So I don't know that I have any thoughts on how to keep dialed in, other than to maybe keep a pin handy, and every time you're thinking about making an inappropriate joke, just stab yourself, and you won't feel funny anymore.
I think you're way too hard on yourself, Ted. I mean, yes, there were certain times when I was trying to be dramatic, and but overall, I should mention again, I'm trying to give credit where credit is due with Mothership, is that they are explicit in the books that they say that that cracking jokes is totally fine. They say that explicitly in the book. They say that there is a difference between watching a horror movie and playing a horror game, in that you can play as players. You're there to have fun. We are playing a game, and we're going to be silly and crack jokes and all that kind of stuff. It's your characters that are experiencing horror, not the players.
Right.
There are rare times, and they're precious when both the character and the player are experiencing them. But that is not the goal of Mothership.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, when I watched other horror actual plays, and I will not name them, they try way too hard to have complete buy-in for the horror, and like they react like they're in this horror movie, and like, oh my god, I'm so scared. Like, no, you're not. You're performing. You're performing, and you're performing.
The shade of John.
No, because when I'm describing something, no matter how I'm dramatically I'm reading it or describing it in the moment, nothing in the way I'm describing it is actually going to give you that chill of horror that you watch from watching Jaws or Alien. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But I can. That's why I think the mechanics are so ingenious. Is that the mechanics reflect how your characters are reacting to that horrible thing that your characters are seeing. But it's totally fine for you guys to crack a joke about it. Like, you're here to have fun.
I also think it's worth noting that comedy and horror engage with basically the same part of the brain, and what is more indicative of someone being anxious than cracking a joke. So I think it actually has a
defense
great
mechanism.
similitude.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I do it.
100. I know, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I don't think any of us were ever like, oh my god, I'm creeped out. Like, we might have been grossed out.
I was grossed out a few times.
We're not in a World of Darkness LARP. You know what I'm saying?
There have been times in this campaign and others where I have definitely felt, I'll call it genuine anxiety about what was happening. When we're noping out of a room, like, nope, we go in there, we're and so there is definitely a visceral, emotional and
100%.
That's what they say in Mothership.
Word for all the chemicals in your bloodstream, your endocrines or whatever, like those John sets up the moment and we feel it sometimes.
Yeah, but you're not feeling horror. You're feeling, but you're feeling that, like you said, like the dopamine, like you're getting that anxiety,
Tension,
and that's what they're attempting to produce, and they do that through tension. So they said, like, keep the tension on, and that will produce the same sort of endorphins that like actually experiencing horror will do, and it'll be a great time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. There was so many questions, and we really they were all great questions. Apologies to those that we had already talked about, but hopefully got a satisfying answer one way or the other. Really do appreciate it.
And you got your name in there.
And I see that there's 119 people on stream, which is amazing that you guys have all stayed out for this long.
That's
crazy. Wonder why you stayed this long.
What could be the reason? Is there anything?
Everything that we could possibly say.
We already told you we're playing Dallas next, I think. Didn't we say that?
First, before we roll into an announcement, just a couple things first. Thank you to everyone out there, especially our patrons. Yes. We really do appreciate it. Thank you to all of my players in front of me here for making this campaign so enjoyable. I think that this will go down as a highlight of 3D6 Details history. I think it stands on its own wonderfully. And if there was any sort of thought that we were not as into this as our other ones, that's false. We had a great time, and it took some adjustment, but that's just what happens when you're switching to another game. And I really enjoyed running it, and major props to Luke Gearing and the crew at Tuesday Night for creating just an absolutely wonderful module. It really was really cool. So thanks to that. So if you're watching this feature, this means nothing, but we, the five of us, are super hyped because in a couple days we're headed off to GaryCon once again. So we're very psyched for that. The campaign actually ended at the perfect time. We didn't plan it this way. But GaryCon and the end of the campaign gave us a little bit of a time to take a break as for the public-facing campaigns. As I said, Domawood is going nowhere. Please join the Patreon. We're here. If you want to get access to a Return to Domawood campaign, nothing's going to change on that aspect. In the interim time, between now and the next main campaign, which you're about to get a tease of, we will be running a few amuse-bouche, which is our little 1, 2, 3 shots that we just dip into another system real quick to have a little bit of fun. Usually GM'd up to this point, always GM'd by someone other than myself. So you should look forward to a couple of those. We're not going to reveal what exactly those are. Let's really leave that up for now. But you can expect that for a little bit of time, we will be running some very, very, very fun amuse-bouche for folks. But I think we all know what we're here for at the very end. So
I can't wait to find out.
Yes.
Whatever it be.
We're gonna tack this on to the very end. So we're gonna say our goodbyes right now. None of you out there leave the stream. But we hope you enjoy what we have in store for you. Thank you all for coming and joining us on this Sunday afternoon. We really do appreciate all of our community. We could not do this without you, nor would we do it without you. And all of your positive feedback over the years and months through all of our campaigns means the absolute world to us. We cannot wait to see a whole bunch of you at GaryCon and face-to-face, play games with you. And we can't wait to continue talking with you on Discord. So thank you, as always, for your continued support. We will see you next time. Enjoy the teaser.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, guys.